With raven hair like midnight, the masses mocked her as the Bat Princess, a daughter discarded by her own flesh and blood. They gouged her eyes and took her head. Once, she was supposed to be the Empire's most cherished firstborn. Her parents, claiming to protect her, let her younger siblings hog the spotlight while she rotted in the shadows. She grinded 25 hours a day, handling the kingdom's dirty work until the fires of war finally ignited. 20 years of lies shattered in an instant. To save her younger sister from a hostage's fate, she stepped up. Obeying her parents' desperate pleas, she charged onto the blood-soaked battlefield without a single shred of hesitation. Wielding god-tier fire magic, she incinerated legions into ash. Yet, looking at the fallen, her heart bled with pity. Compassion flickered in her soul, but the soldiers behind her barked orders to keep killing for the sake of family. To shield her people, she hardened her heart and decimated nearly half the enemy's entire military force. But mid-battle, her parents waved the white flag, selling her out to the enemy just to buy Nicola's freedom. Traded like a pawn for Nicola, she descended into a living hell, abandoned by both her crown and her kin. Emperor Hepwen of the enemy nation wanted her as his concubine, promising to grant her every dark desire. She refused to be a traitor. After rejecting Hepwen, his jealous concubines began their sadistic cycle of torture. They ripped out her eyes. After 10 years of agony and countless scars, she finally returned to her homeland. The moment she touched home soil, the citizens pelted her with filth, screaming that she was a sellout traitor. They branded her history's worst villain. Even her siblings showed up just to flex and mock her broken state. "You were always just the royal scapegoat," they sneered. "We never actually considered you one of us." The truth? Before marrying the king, her mother had a scandalous affair with her uncle, a top-tier mage. She was a royal bastard. The king had executed her real father the moment he seized the throne. She was erased from the world. Only one lone servant brought her food and whispered the devastating truth. For years, Rose carried the world's guilt for a family she had loved with every fiber of her soul. The people she died to protect now thirsted for her blood. Finally, her parents dragged her to the gallows. Her head fell amidst the crowd's curses, but when her eyes snapped open, she had regressed 10 years back. It was Nicola's 16th birthday. The enemy empire's letter arrived, demanding a royal princess for a political marriage. Everyone assumed Nicola was the sacrifice, but this time, Rose was ready to choose absolute violence and revenge. She'd make them pay. Step 1. Ally with the enemy's tyrant and burn this entire kingdom to the ground. Rose intercepted the deal. Emperor Hepwen of the Charlo Empire was a notorious monster with a heart of ice. His reputation was lethal. One wrong word meant beheading. He'd even ended the previous emperor with his own hands. He treated his staff like trash and kept 6 lethal concubines who lived to tear each other apart. Nicola would be eaten alive in that palace. As expected, the family started crying over their precious favorite's fate. They instantly decided Rose would go instead, hypocritically claiming, "Rose, you truly are our greatest royal pride." Little did they know, they were the ones being played. Rose married Hepwen, ready to walk beside the tyrant. Her mission was to dismantle Barrier personally, but the second the wedding ended, Hepwen vanished without a word. Left isolated in the imperial palace, Rose realized the servants were already planning to ice her out. The pushover from her past life was dead. Rose instantly snatched a disrespectful maid by her throat. She tossed her aside and used fire magic to torch her hair. Terrified, the maid began to spill everything. The head maid was plotting with the emperor's concubines to make the new empress's life a total nightmare. Rose didn't wait. She hunted down the head maid and trashed the entire room until it was in ruins. She ordered the woman to scrub every inch. The head maid snapped, screaming, "Have you lost your mind, psycho? The emperor appointed me. A low-blooded bat princess like you doesn't deserve a single second of my service. His Majesty is surrounded by real beauties. You're nothing but a glorified ornament for this palace. You can't even clean a room. Pathetic. If you beg me, maybe I'll find someone to help you out." That disgusting face triggered memories of the ingrates from her past. Rose lunged and grabbed her by the scalp. She hacked the hair off. Let's see who the emperor backs, his ornament or a bald, disgraced servant. The blades grazed her skin as the woman trembled, finally seeing the murderous demon hidden in Rose's eyes. In that heartbeat, blood sprayed the room. The boss shrieked in pure agony, but Rose watched with ice in her veins. Compared to the hell of her past life, this was child's play. Soon, Rose's reputation as a ruthless villainess spread like wildfire. She had already crushed the crown prince of her own homeland. Her name became synonymous with a legendary, high-tier villainess. She bled the commoners dry with taxes, just to fund her lavish lifestyle and party with the high society elite. She manipulated the king into rewriting laws and even commanded her country's warships to betray their own allies. As the only royal cursed with raven black hair and zero ethics, people dubbed her the Bat Princess of the Palace. The news reached the 6 concubines, who immediately plotted a tea party trap to teach this brat a lesson. Rose weighed the invitation. narrowing her eyes when she saw the host was Lady Elisa, the snake-like fourth concubine. In her past life, Elisa had tormented Rose in prison, forcing her to bark like an animal for her sick amusement. She even came to mock Rose after her eyes were torn out. This time, Rose decided to strike first. She strutted into the tea party, looking like a literal goddess. Immediately, the other women began dripping with sarcastic shade. They mocked her as a low-born bastard, claiming her dirty black hair was unworthy of the silver-haired emperor. Rose clapped back instantly. "You're all just glorified side chicks. Your kids will be the real bastards with impure blood." She glared at Elisa, "Especially you, Lady Elisa. Since you aren't silver-haired either, imagine if your child takes after you. The paternity will be a total scandal. His Majesty won't even acknowledge the illegitimate brats of his concubines." Elisa went nuclear, screaming like a banshee, while Rose strutted out with a smirk, already craving the next round. "I have a dinner date with the Emperor tonight. No time for losers." Elisa had never felt such soul-crushing humiliation. Consumed by toxic jealousy, Elisa forged a letter, lying that the Emperor wanted to meet Rose at a private location. Rose smelled the trap instantly, but played along anyway. Suddenly, a massive, heavy barrel came crashing down from above. As filth soaked Rose's head and face, the concubines cackled from the balcony. "Is this our Grand Empresses now? Since you're dining with His Majesty, we thought we'd help your boring black hair pop with some actual color." Rose didn't lose her cool for a second. She simply returned to her room, changed her fit, and scrubbed away the grime. Meanwhile, the Emperor was getting ghosted at the table. He assumed she'd bailed after the incident earlier that day. Then, the doors swung open. Rose arrived late, but glowing. Her hair transformed into a stunning, radiant golden hue. This ethereal, breathtaking transformation left the Emperor completely mesmerized. He actually downed 13 glasses of wine back to back. After calming his racing heart, he asked why she dyed it again. Rose dropped a total bombshell. She hadn't. "This is my natural color," she revealed. "In the Barrier Kingdom, golden hair is the ultimate symbol of royal blood. It represents pure royalty and god-tier magic." But to ensure Prince Aries' throne, her parents had gaslighted her for years. They claimed people would hunt her for her magic if they knew, forcing her to dye it trash black as a disguise. "They treated me like a disposable pawn from day one. This golden hair is the undeniable proof of their betrayal." She had shared these same secrets with Jequin in her past life, the man who eventually restored her sight. Rose mentioned this to make Jequin realize he was also being used. "Don't I look much better by your side now?" Jequin's expression turned to ice. "I have zero expectations of you," he snapped, his voice dripping with coldness. "This city is full of useful women. Remember, once you cross the line, I will abandon you like garbage." Rose didn't flinch. Instead, she threw out the ultimate bait. "I know every dark secret of the Barrier Kingdom, including the secret of the White Whale ship." The room went dead silent. Everyone present was completely floored. Rose knew the White Whale was the lifeline of the Charlio Empire's trade, operating out of the national port. It traveled through vassal states before returning to the frozen Charliote lands, which relied entirely on these resources. The ship was currently loaded with vital cargo and due back next month, but a catastrophe was already looming. According to her past life intel, the Caprice Kingdom was planning a devastating ambush on the ship in 30 days. They wanted the cargo, the crew would be slaughtered, and Jequin would lose everything he was waiting for. Worst of all, the Barrier Kingdom was secretly helping with the attack while hiding the identity of the true culprits. They were set to receive a massive payout for their betrayal. Back then, Rose hadn't been able to stop it. She remembered every detail of how her own homeland planned to backstab their allies for a quick profit. Rose would use this intel as her golden ticket to win Jequin's favor and survive this dangerous new world. They were Charlotte's longtime allies, and Nicola reigned as Jepuen's empress. But her greedy father framed Rose, forcing Jepuen to pay for the massive losses. The culprit vanished, leaving Jepuen frantic until a specific name reached his ears. He froze at the words "White Whale ship" and demanded the full story immediately. Rose was the country's hidden guardian, protecting them all from the shadows. Yet she was sold, scorned, and blinded before meeting a truly miserable end. Reborn and seeking vengeance, she married the enemy tyrant to destroy her homeland. With her past memories, she began by crushing the headmaid's pride. She ruthlessly humbled the concubines, moving with an aura of absolute cold arrogance. She leaked vital state secrets, warning that their merchant fleet was marked for ambush. Charlotte provided every detail. Stunned, Jepuen instantly ordered a high-priority search. That ship was the Empire's lifeline, packed with a fortune in rare metals. Failure meant execution for the culprit, but Rose was also risking her life. News of Rose and the Emperor vibing together spread through the palace. This sparked a jealous, toxic spiral within Elisa, the fourth concubine. Elisa baited her to a party, but Rose arrived looking like a total goddess. In the garden, she met Sasha, the only light in her dark, previous life. When Rose was tortured and blinded, Sasha was the only soul who visited. She apologized for the cruelty of the others who feasted on Rose's suffering. Sasha used healing magic to soothe her, but the traumatized Rose trusted nobody. She dumped the wine, only to desperately lick the floor later, checking for poison. Never forgetting that kindness, Rose planned to invite Sasha to a private tea. But first, trash duty. At the gala, Rose finally unveiled her radiant, golden hair. In this world, gold and silver hair symbolized the peak of magical power. Guests whispered that the Golden Empress and Silver Emperor were a legendary match. The concubines' faces twisted with pure, ugly envy at the sight. Elisa ordered a sneak attack, but Rose had already marked her target. After playing the socialite, Rose hunted down the girl who tried to trip her. She silenced her target before crushing the girl's foot with brutal force. Her sharp heel pierced flesh, spraying blood as the crowd watched in horror. "Sneak attacks are so mid," Rose sneered. "You aren't even worth his gaze." Elisa snapped, hurling a wine glass directly at Rose in a blind rage. Shards sliced Rose's cheek open, and the terrified guests begged her to flee. Rose was a notorious villainess, yet Elisa stood her ground, completely unfazed. Trusting the Emperor's favoritism, Elisa didn't see Rose grab a sharp fruit knife. Rose hurled the blade with lethal precision, instantly shredding Elisa's expensive dress. Elisa collapsed, desperately clutching her rags to avoid being exposed in public. Rose looked down at the pathetic clown as the room erupted in laughter. A mere concubine attacking the Empress, she got exactly what she deserved. Camila, the sixth concubine, watched this chaos with a new, twisted interest. Meanwhile, the worried Emperor arrived just as the situation reached its peak. He watched in shock as Elisa was carried out, her dignity in tatters. When the maids began whining, Jepuen's expression turned lethally cold and impatient. "Who gave you permission to speak?" His voice made the entire room tremble. After learning the truth, Jepuen stormed off to find Rose in a fury. "You've really crossed the line this time," tearing Elisa's dress. A mere empress dares to attack the Emperor's favorite? Elisa hails from the neighboring kingdom of Julin. Her family is a powerhouse, controlling 70% of all trade. Relations between our nations have always been toxic. That house holds the literal keys to our economy. The previous emperor's tyranny left deep scars. Now, Julin's king refuses any direct diplomatic ties with us. We're forced to trade solely through that count. The more Jepuen thought about it, the more he seethed with rage. If this trade link snaps, we lose Julin forever. Can you even fathom the weight of that responsibility? But Rose didn't flinch, not even a little. She stood her ground, completely unfazed by his imperial fury. She tapped her chest with total confidence. "You don't need her anymore, because I'm the one standing by your side now." A doctor arrived to treat her face, but Jepuen violently kicked the medical kit aside in a fit of pique. "Do you want to be punished? You still have zero value." To his shock, Rose just started laughing at his threats. She swiped blood from her wound and smeared it across Jepuen's lips. "You'll recognize my true worth soon enough. Just wait for the perfect moment, Your Majesty." Jepuen's heart hammered against his ribs as he turned beet red. Back at his desk, he couldn't even focus on state affairs. Rose wasn't just bluffing, she was playing for keeps. Recalling her past life, she knew a scandalous secret. The king of Julin was destined to die very soon. He'd be caught meeting his secret mistress, a scandal that would set every newspaper in the land ablaze. If she played this right, she'd eclipse Elisa's influence. Rose immediately demanded a trip abroad to start her move. Shockingly, Jepuen insisted on coming along. He dropped his entire schedule just to stay by her side. He cleared every meeting. The news sent massive shockwaves through the entire imperial palace. It was basically a royal honeymoon. The emperor had never traveled with a woman before. The empress was truly favored. When Elisa heard the news, she absolutely lost it. Meanwhile, Rose expected a simple diplomatic journey, but Jepuen became strangely possessive, demanding they share every meal and even the same bed. However, whenever Xian was near, Jepuen's mood soured. Seeing her loyal knight made the emperor's blood boil. "That man never leaves your side," Rose smirked. "Wait, are you actually jealous, Your Majesty?" Flustered and embarrassed, Jepuen snapped back, "You're just drunk," but Rose didn't even care to argue. As she turned to leave, he hauled her onto the bed. He hovered over her, his gaze burning with intensity. He pinned her down, breath hitching. "Stop trying to prove your worth. Just give me an heir to secure your throne." But Rose only had eyes for her grand revenge. She wasn't about to become some trophy wife. She shoved the tyrant aside with a cold, arrogant look. "I'll consider it when I'm in the mood." Then, she vanished into the night. The emperor was left stunned and speechless. After everything, she didn't even give him a second glance. Rose sped away in her carriage. Suddenly, the horses screeched to a violent halt. Bandits were blocking the road, ready to kill. They wanted no witnesses left alive, but Rose wasn't afraid. A sinister smile played on her lips as she charged. She unleashed a torrent of fire, turning the thugs to ash. The carnage only fueled her excitement. The hatred in her soul was a bottomless pit of resentment. Her magic was more devastating than ever before. This was a true force of nature unleashed. She approached the ambushed carriage. Her memories confirmed her suspicions the moment she saw the crest. It was the King of Julan himself, clutching his secret lover in absolute terror. In her past life, they both died right here, but this time, Rose was the one holding all the cards. The king tried to play dumb, hiding the truth, but Rose wasn't in the mood for his pathetic games. Imagine if the queen found out that her husband's heart belongs to a common mistress. As fellow royalty, I really shouldn't keep secrets from her. Her voice was as cold as ice. The king fell to his knees, begging for mercy. Rose flashed a dangerous, predatory smile at his desperation. Let's sign a little agreement, shall we? Broken. The king had no choice but to obey her demands. Rose returned to find Jepwen pacing frantically. He had been waiting for her return all night long. His face was filled with visible hurt and longing. Was a walk really more important than being with me? Rose simply tossed him the signed treaty. I ran into the King of Julan. We have a new trade deal. He even desires a peaceful alliance with Charlotte. Here is the undeniable proof. Jepwen stood frozen. This entire treaty was handwritten by the King of Julian himself. This was pure insanity. Just 2 months ago, the king utterly loathed Charlotte. He'd explicitly banned all trade before, but Rose wasn't in the mood for explanations. She spun around, pinning him down. I'm feeling spicy. Let's do something a bit reckless. Jepwen abandoned all logic, leaning in to claim her lips. By the next morning, Jepwen forcibly deported Elisa back to Julian, coldly stating, I no longer need you. Elisa wailed in desperation, but she was dragged away without even seeing Jepwen again. Jepwen's mind was flooded with memories of Rose. His heart was pounding with pure adrenaline. Meanwhile, Rose kept receiving gruesome packages dead cats. Without flinching, she issued a command. Cook them into a feast. Having survived bloody wars and imprisonment in her past life, surviving death row and agony, Rose returned home only to be pelted by citizens with rotting animal carcasses. Decay was her constant companion, but as she bit into her meal, a strange metallic tang signaled danger. The food was spiked. Instantly, she rounded up the entire kitchen staff, her eyes flashing with lethal intent. She commanded them to feast. Despite their confusion, the terrified staff obeyed, stuffing the suspicious food down their throats. Only the head maid refused a single bite. Rose's lips curved into a wicked smirk before she suddenly spoke. Spit it out. It's laced with toxin. Quickly, rinse your mouths before it's too late, she commanded coldly. Pure chaos followed. Panic-stricken staff jammed fingers down their throats to purge the meal while Rose stood unfazed. She closed in on the head maid, singling her out as the architect of this pathetic assassination attempt. The maid turned pale. How did she detect the lethal dose? Rose wasn't about to waste words on a traitor. She grabbed the poisoned scraps and forced them into the maid's mouth. The woman blacked out instantly. This wasn't meant to kill, only to cause agony. Clearly, the mastermind had no clue about Rose's dark childhood. Her parents subjected her to agonizing sessions, forcing her to consume toxins just to build up immunity. She was actually a disposable shield for her siblings, though it granted her an uncanny sense for poison. Rose recalled a servant's whisper regarding the headmaid's secret alliances with the 4th and 6th concubines. She realized the 6th concubine was the mastermind. Meanwhile, the tyrant heard news that Rose had been targeted. He personally exposed the headmaid as the one behind the lethal attempt and forced the traitor to drink her own concoction. The emperor then showered Rose with praise, commanding the imperial physician to treat her immediately. The entire court was paralyzed with shock. His Majesty, the famously cold-hearted emperor, actually cared for someone. The royal doctor arrived in a frantic rush and used soothing magic to mend her body. With a gentle smile, the physician noted, "Only you can move the emperor's heart like this. You are our nation's most precious treasure. I would rush here for even a minor cold." The palace staff trembled, fearing for their lives. They hadn't realized the empress was so cherished. One word from her could wipe out their entire families. But instead of seeking blood, Rose surprised everyone by gifting each worker a pouch of gold. She even provided medical treatment for those forced to test the poisons. The staff was moved to tears. The empress is truly a saint. With this money, my sick family members can finally be saved. The headmaid manipulated us into mistreating her. We were so blind. From this moment on, we must pledge our lives to her for a better future. Rose watched them with a satisfied smirk. Balancing reward and punishment was the ultimate imperial tactic. Soon, the 6th concubine sent a formal dinner invitation to the empress. Upon receiving the letter, Rose suddenly asked Sin if she was skilled with a needle and thread. The witch was once sold by her family and met a tragic end. After being reborn, she married the empire's tyrant. He was the only person who showed her kindness in her past life. Still, the concubines kept provoking her. They mocked the witch with the tyrant's twisted cravings, weaving sinister threats into every word. To set a chilling example, she drenched her servant in red wine before executing them. This witch then ruthlessly shoved the victim into the pool, mocking them like a filthy rodent drowning in deep water. Meanwhile, the tyrant received a formal invite from the King of Julian. Rose had finally proven her worth. She was now the vital bridge connecting two powerful nations. The tyrant Hepwen immediately brought her along to the grand national banquet. But before leaving, consumed by jealousy, he forbid Rose from bringing Aeson along. Upon arriving at Julian's palace, King Jerome and his queen appeared to welcome them. Fearing Rose might expose his secret affair, Jerome acted exceptionally hospitable. However, the nobles were visibly disgusted, pointing at Hepwen while whispering vile obscenities. Why let such trash enter the sacred halls of Julienne? The Empress is just a low-born bloodbat princess, and he is a notorious tyrant. His Majesty has lost his mind inviting these cockroaches. We truly fear Julian will be tainted. Relations between the two empires had always been toxic. It was natural for them to despise Hepwen. Yet, his expression remained icy and calm, long desensitized to such slander. He knew his reputation was trash. He had slain the previous emperor, though that man was a monster himself, a ruler who oppressed weak nations to dominate the continent. Following that bloody coup, Hepwen was branded the demon's son. Nobles mocked him with biting sarcasm, claiming his cruel methods mirrored his father's. His magic is his only trait. In his kingdom, the citizens are all starving to death. That would satisfy us. But Rose had reached her limit, glaring at them with a terrifying, shadow-filled expression. I dare you to repeat that. The royal nobles just laughed, continuing their stream of insults and mockery. Rose instantly summoned hellfire, incinerating the insolent fools into piles of black charcoal. In that heartbeat, she paralyzed the entire room with fear. Hepwen was stunned. Usually, in these moments, his concubines would only offer empty pity or tell him to ignore the haters, since they had nothing good to say. They would tremble in fear, unsure how to react, or simply pretend they didn't hear a thing. This was the first time someone had stepped up to defend him with absolute, crushing power. Hepwen stood dazed, but he was certain she wasn't just trying to butter him up. Suddenly, Rose let out a sharp laugh. I'm simply fulfilling my duties as a wife. I'll take full responsibility, so don't worry. I'm used to handling things for others. Nobody gets to slander my husband. After all, in her past life, Hepwen had shown her mercy and reached out his hand. This was her small payback. Rose hissed at the crowd. I should rip out your tongues and burn them to dust. For the man she loved, she chose violence, finally unveiling her true power before the trembling nobility. With a flick of her wrist, she launched two massive fireballs, cooking the disrespectful elites until they were nothing but ash. The survivors shook with terror, falling to their knees and begging for her to spare them for the sake of international peace. The tyrant let out a delighted laugh. Finally, someone was willing to go to war for him. Hepwen's obsession with this infamous empress only intensified. As for the chaos, the King of Julian sentenced the surviving offenders to death for disrespecting his royal guests. Thanks to Rose's brutal intimidation, the bond between Julian and Charlotte tightened at lightning speed. They quickly became inseparable allies. News spread like wildfire. The Empress had effortlessly crushed a massive diplomatic crisis without even needing her family's name. It's no wonder she could ship the fourth concubine back to her home country. That girl can't even touch the Empress's shadow. Everyone became a Rose stan, surrounding her with hard eyes and constantly checking on her well-being. No one dared to help the sixth concubine send dead cats anymore, but Rose never forgets a grudge. She ordered a daily delivery of dead rats to the sixth concubine's doorstep. The woman nearly lost her mind, throwing another massive tantrum in her room. That despicable woman, insulting a duke during the Julian visit, is clearly a fatal blunder. Why isn't His Majesty punishing her according to the laws? She should be executed for sabotaging negotiations. Even if she's slightly useful, nothing should change. Why did His Majesty spare her life instead of ending it? The sixth concubine smashed her belongings, blinded by jealousy. Does His Majesty actually love her? She gets to spend every night with him while I get nothing. I haven't even laid a finger on His Majesty. The sixth concubine's face twisted with pure venom. She wanted Rose dead. Yet Rose was the Empress. Every shadow hit a spy, making a direct hit way too risky for her. One wrong move and she'd be exiled like that failure, the fourth concubine. So, she targeted Rose's servant instead. This man, Sin, was the sixth born of the Pennyworths, a noble house from the kingdom of Barrier. Crushed by family debt, the poor guy was sold off to the palace as a common laborer. He was a total ghost, never speaking to anyone, nothing special, but for some reason, the Bat Princess adored him, even bringing him along for her marriage. Staring at Sin's strikingly handsome face, she was sure they were low-key dating. Concubine 6 smirked. Dead cats didn't break you, did they? I'll just strike your favorite person then. Honestly, Rose only kept him because he saved her past life. She just wanted to pay him back, despite barely speaking. Plus, Sin was a god-tier chef. His needlework was elite, which Rose loved. That day, Sin left to brew some tea. But he never came back. Suddenly, a maid burst in, panicking. Lord Sin was brutally attacked and kidnapped. Meanwhile, the psycho concubine admired the blood on her own face, flashing a satisfied grin. This princess had single-handedly fixed national relations. Anyone who dared cross her or plot against her ended up destroyed. Before, people feared her. But now, they genuinely respected the Bat Princess's genius. However, a few jealous concubines couldn't stand it. Since they couldn't beat the Empress, they went for her boy. After their success, they shared a sinister laugh. When the Bat Queen found out, she summoned the best doctors instantly, but they could only barely save his life. The wound was too deep. That hideous scar would never fade. This was Concubine 6's warning. Rose was absolutely fuming. The staff trembled, terrified they'd be the next victims. Rose gently stroked Sin's face, trying to comfort him. Sin, you're still gorgeous. Even with that scar, you're handsome to me. I really like you. Finally, Sin relaxed. He still remembered he needed to make his lady's tea. Rose told him to rest, then stormed toward the concubine's palace in a blind rage. Meanwhile, that snake was still relishing in how she slashed Sin's face open. He's a monster now. The Empress won't care. Suddenly, the door exploded into flames. Rose marched in, wreathed in fire and pure murderous intent. The concubine flinched, but quickly masked her fear with a sarcastic sneer. Brazenly, she asked, "Oh, is that you, Empress? Heard your servant got hurt so sad. It's your fault for being a dumb owner. Now he's just trash. You're not special." The Emperor has god-level healing and could fix him, but he never heals anyone. Especially not a lowly servant. Go beg him if you want. Rose just kept approaching, her eyes cold. The concubine finally panicked. "Get back! I'm a pureblood. From the Charlotte family. Touch me and you're finished." But Rose didn't flinch. Fear was non-existent. She grabbed her head, her fingertips igniting with a violent blaze, torching the concubine's hair instantly. The woman screamed in agony. Rose grabbed her face, forcing her to feel the pain of being disfigured. The guards shouted, charging forward. Rose recognized their faces immediately. These were the same monsters who ripped out her eyes in her past life. Fury boiled over as Rose unleashed a massive fireball, incinerating them into ash. She stood over the charred concubine, recalling every insult from her previous life. How unsightly. A peasant like you dares to defy his majesty? You really don't know your place. Rose smirked. Wow. You look hideous. Dirtier than a sewer rat. Now, it's your turn. Another fireball ignited in her palm. Terror paralyzed the concubine as tears streamed down her face. Suddenly, the Emperor materialized, his gaze locking onto her mangled, disfigured features. Staring at the charred remains of the guards nearby, he spoke with a voice as cold as ice. Such audacity. What do you think you're doing? Yet even the Emperor's presence couldn't suppress her. She didn't flinch. Instead, she laughed it off, claiming this chaos was just a wife's petty jealousy. Surprisingly, the Emperor actually chuckled at her bold charm. He didn't drop the hammer. Instead, he praised her for being adorable. After that, every servant in the palace started kissing her feet. Political factions began thirsting for an alliance. Some were useful pawns, but then a letter arrived from her deadbeat biological father. The absolute nerve of him trying to play nice now. Rose didn't even spare it a glance before torching the parchment. They were all going to rot in hell eventually. Rose headed to find Sasa, unaware that Sasa had already heard the tea. The rumor mill was buzzing. The Empress's loyal guard had been brutalized and left broken by that venomous sixth concubine. The poor guy was in bad shape. Sasa sprinted to the infirmary, desperate to check on his condition immediately. But seeing Sin's face sent a chill through her. The scar was jagged and deep. Would this trauma break his spirit? Would he flee? But Sin was ride or die for Rose. After all, the Empress had literally gone to war just for his sake. She'd provoked powerful factions to avenge him. His only fear? That his ugly face would embarrass the royal court he served. He didn't want to be a stain on Rose's reputation while she stood beside the Emperor. Sasa told him to chill out. "Our Empress is a literal angel to us commoners," she insisted. "She won't dump you over a tiny little scar like this." Sin went quiet. It was obvious Sasa had zero clue who Rose actually was deep down inside. She was never just a princess. She was a chess piece her family threw away, but she clawed her way up alone. She seized power through sheer will. This woman wasn't some soft-hearted saint. She was a survivor with ice in her veins. Still, Sin's loyalty was unshakable. Sasa gasped in shock. "Wait, do you actually have inappropriate feelings for our Empress?" Sin was profoundly grateful for her protection. However, he was just a servant whose only mission was to serve her well. Little did they know, Rose was eavesdropping right outside. She'd come for a chat, but got a massive earful instead. Hearing his words stung her heart just a bit. Regardless, her priority was Sin's recovery and those nasty, painful wounds. Once the medic confirmed he was mostly fine, scar aside, she immediately demanded that Sin return to work for her. A scar didn't matter as long as he was still breathing. Rose didn't care about aesthetics. She cared about her people. She personally unwrapped his bandages and hand-fed him. Watching him eat comfortably was the only thing that finally calmed her nerves. The scar was gnarly, but the Emperor's god-tier healing magic could erase it in a heartbeat. There was just one catch. That tyrant wouldn't lift a finger for a lowly servant. To save Sin, Rose had to play the long game first. She needed to seduce the beast before asking for favors. Besides, Sin still looked like a total snack, scar included. Having led armies in her past life, she was used to battle scars. To her, they were symbols of true strength. Sasa felt like a total third wheel and quickly changed the subject, inviting them to the upcoming spring festival. It was a massive deal for the citizens, filled with street food and a total vibe for everyone involved. Rose felt a pang of awkwardness. She'd never done a festival before, but memories from her previous life suddenly flashed back. Something catastrophic had happened there. It was all over the front pages. A dark shadow loomed over the entire celebration. Staying home was safe, but to solidify her power, she had to be proactive. Rose wasn't about to hide away. She grabbed Sin and headed out. Meanwhile, the tyrant emperor was busy reading a spicy protest letter from a duke. The sixth concubine's father was rallying the nobles. They were throwing a tantrum, demanding the empress be punished immediately. They threatened to cut ties if he didn't act. But the emperor? He couldn't care less about their empty threats. He viewed it as a cute display of jealousy. Plus, the concubine had technically started the fight by attacking Sin first. Rose was just balancing the scales, but a frown suddenly crossed the tyrant's face. Is she being too nice to that guard? He had no clue Rose and Sin were already hitting the market. People were already shipping them as the perfect couple. Rose had officially cemented her status in the empire through her ruthless and calculated moves. Her parents tried to slide into her DMs again, but she just incinerated their desperate letters without a second thought. They'd sold her off to a monster just to spare her sister. They never expected her to actually survive, let alone thrive. When no reply came, her parents lost their minds and started blaming Rose for being a selfish brat. They called her ungrateful, even theorizing she was locked in a dungeon somewhere with zero contact with the outside world. They assumed her gorgeous face would seduce secrets out of the emperor. Jokes on them, she seemed totally useless. Rumors spread that the tyrant kicked a concubine back to her homeland. If Rose gets deported too, they could exploit her like a pawn again. They pictured her sobbing over the tyrant's cruelty, clueless that Rose was actually vibing at the spring festival with Shin. The emperor was low-key fuming with jealousy. That guard had gnarly scars. Yet the empress kept him glued to her side. She even took him to the festival without giving the emperor an invite. Who was the real husband here? Little did he know. As Rose and Shin strolled through the bustling streets, everyone totally mistook them for a cute couple. Rose was grateful for the freedom, but the massive guard escort? Total overkill. They were definitely babysitting her, but Rose only had eyes for the snacks. This was her first time hitting a festival back home. She used to be so jealous of her siblings' festival fun. Her parents always pulled the "it's too dangerous" card, leaving Rose stuck at home with endless chores while they partied. Now, she was finally living her best life, free as a bird. Rose generously told the guards to go enjoy themselves while she went on a massive foodie spree. Poison? Not even a threat. In her past life, she was literally a human guinea pig for toxins, testing them for her siblings until she became immune. Suddenly, she spotted a puppy vendor claiming these dogs would die for their masters. Rose was a total powerhouse who could protect herself, but she was low-key worried about another hit on Shin's life. Getting him 2 canine bodyguards sounded like a solid plan. Back in the war-torn days of her past life, she saw the military use massive hounds. Let's face it, dogs are way more loyal than humans ever will be. Right then, a pack of ferocious hounds broke loose from their iron cages, charging at the terrified crowd with bared fangs. The guards rushed to shield Rose, ready to open fire. But the owner shrieked that these dogs were worth a fortune. Shooting them was out of the question. Originally, they were meant for nobles, but they were too savage to handle. Now, he was planning to dump them on the army to guard gunpowder depots. Rose just gave a sweet, chilling smile at the news. She stepped right toward the beasts, igniting her fire magic with a flick of her wrist. She'd seen this countless times. On the front lines, exactly how to break a war dog. Rose instantly encircled the predators in a ring of scorching flames, giving them a choice: absolute loyalty or becoming literal charcoal. The beasts whimpered in terror, instantly turning into submissive pups under Rose's command. Only then did she snuff out the flames and buy the whole pack. Watching from the shadows, a man smashed a bottle in a fit of rage. Those useless mutts were neutralized way too fast. He hadn't even finished prepping all the gunpowder yet. But it didn't matter. With the festival packed, even a small blast would trigger absolute carnage. Just as he reached for the fuse, Rose manifested behind him like a ghost, playing with fire in a crowd. Bold move. The man froze in terror. His movements were stealthy, so how did she find him? Rose didn't wait. She kicked him hard. The guards swarmed him, pinning the traitor to the dirt, all thanks to Rose's perfect timing. See, Rose remembered this exact catastrophe from her past life. It was a calculated terror attack. In the original timeline, someone used savage dogs to incite panic and bloodied the streets. That chaos was just a cover to smuggle gunpowder for a massive blast. In her previous life, the Barrier newspapers headlined the tragedy, a devastating inferno on Main Street during the Spring Festival. The massive crowds made it impossible to douse the flames, leading to countless deaths. But Rose had moved first. With one swift strike, she'd crushed the tragedy before it started. The man shrieked like a maniac. It's all that pathetic emperor's fault. Allowing a foreign woman as his concubine and making that bat princess our empress is an insult. She's unworthy. The sixth concubine's house holds the true, pure blood of Charlotte. Rose just scoffed at his sheer stupidity. The kingdom of Charlotte marrying foreign women was literally ancient history. Even the previous emperor had foreign wives. Besides, Rose was merely a high-stakes hostage from Barrier. The man kept howling, "I'll tear down the emperor's reign. I'll plant the seeds of revolution." Rose stared him down with ice in her eyes. "Since you love playing with fire so much, let's make it a real show." She unleashed her fire magic with a snap. Instantly, the man was engulfed in a blazing inferno, giving him a literal taste of his own revolutionary fire. Thanks to Rose's clutch intervention, a catastrophic disaster was officially averted. Word quickly reached the tyrant's ears. The investigation was clear. The Empress had zero connection to that man. It was a lone wolf operation. The tyrant already knew Rose wouldn't stoop to something as low as terrorism. However, Rose had scorched the criminal's face. He was mangled and needed medical attention before facing his execution. Returning from the festival, Rose only sent him a pathetic little bouquet. Even Sasa got a better one. What Rose actually gifted Sin were two ferocious hounds she had personally broken and trained for him. Sin looked absolutely devastated, thinking these dogs were his replacements. Rose just burst out laughing. This was strictly for Sin's protection. She even gave him the honor of naming the beasts himself. But Sin was terrible at it. Every name he picked was soft and uwu. Rose had to take over. She dubbed them Nicola and Eri after her siblings. Right then, the tyrant's messenger crashed the party. Rose expected a lecture about the fire, but the tyrant went straight for the jugular. Fire Sin. He offered Sin a promotion, a mountain of gold, and a mansion. Anything just to get him away from Rose. Rose demanded a reason, too petty to admit he was jealous. The tyrant played the hypocrite card. He claimed Sin's scars were eyesores, unfit for an empress's side. His own aide cringed at the pettiness. He could heal those marks with a snap of his fingers, yet used them as an excuse. Rose wasn't having it. Hard pass. Sin was her exclusive aide. Besides, those scars were the sixth concubine's fault, not his. Sin shouldn't pay for that. If the emperor hated the scars so much, Rose would just muzzle him. She'd put a dog muzzle on Sin to hide the damage. She was a villainess, after all. A wicked woman and her vicious hound made a perfect pair. The tyrant actually laughed. This girl was insane. He loved the audacity. The matter was dropped for now. 4 days remained until the White Whale raid. Rose spent every second whipping those dogs into shape, naming them 7 and 4. She utilized brutal combat drills she'd mastered on the battlefields of her previous life. She trained them daily in the garden, prepping them to eventually tear those concubines to shreds. In 4 days, they'd prove their worth. Rose refused to leak the exact coordinates of the attack. Rose insisted on leading the operation in person, but the tyrant wasn't even listening to the plan. His entire focus was on the Empress training dogs for another man. He couldn't stand seeing them together. He immediately banned the Empress from training dogs in the courtyard. New rules starting now. He demanded she train right under his window instead. The servants were absolutely shook by the order. His Majesty guarded his window view like a hawk. Not even the staff were allowed to pass by there. Then, with a petty shrug and a tilted head, the tyrant announced he was joining the voyage too. 4 days later at the docks, the tyrant was lurking. He gave her a chilling, fierce warning. "Lie to me and you'll wish for death," he growled. Yet, his hands told a completely different story. His hand gently, almost tenderly, stroked Rose's cheek. Rose was convinced the man was mentally ill. After the training ban, she thought she'd messed up. She figured she was in deep trouble. Turns out, he just wanted her in a spot with a good view, right where he could watch her. Rose assumed it was surveillance. Maybe he'd off her today, but today she'd prove her absolute value. Right on cue, the White Whale hit mid-voyage and was suddenly swarmed by bloodthirsty pirates. Even after hearing the Charlotte Empire's name, the pirates didn't flinch. "Kill them all!" they roared. A Quepris official stepped out from the pirate ship, gloating about their invaluable cargo haul. With the White Whale, Quepris would have unlimited military funds, while the Charlotte Empire crumbled. Charlotte's power would vanish. The tyrant would be left toothless. Quepris would be the new world superpower. He ordered the white whale sent to the bottom of the sea to erase every trace of the crime. But just then, a massive warship loomed over them, carrying both the tyrant Jepwen and Rose. Jepwen saw every betrayal from the deck. His face was a mask of pure, dark rage. Rose was right. Everything happened exactly as Rose predicted. Jepwen was reeling. Navigating these positions was nearly impossible. How did Rose nail the location so precisely? The pirates realized their trap had just backfired. Jepwen's warship was suddenly ambushed. The crew roared for blood, but the precious cargo held them back. They couldn't risk damaging the white whale's treasures. Suddenly, a cold, mocking laugh escaped Rose's lips. Tossing her cloak aside, she smirked. "I've been holding back. Today, I show everyone my true power. Watch me closely," she declared, before diving into a skiff and charging solo toward the white whale. Panic erupted as the crew feared for her life. They scrambled to follow her into the fray. But Jepwen stopped them cold. "Let her die," he sneered. "It saves me the trouble of drowning her." Sino's gaze darkened with rage, yet the vice commander knew the Empress's intel was absolutely top tier. His Majesty wasn't about to let her die. Besides, that confident smirk on his face said everything. He knew the Empress was invincible. Following her orders, he watched every single one of her moves. He'd memorize her every strike. By then, Rose had already leaped onto the deck of the white whale. Pirates swarmed her instantly, but Rose didn't flinch. These losers were nothing compared to Charlotte's elite army. In her previous life, these thugs were mere ants. Rose instantly unleashed the lethal Red Lotus flames. Pirates turned into human torches. With her god-tier control, the cargo stayed untouched by the roaring fire. She was just using these pirates for target practice. With every kill, her mana surged to new heights. Terrified, the pirates abandoned the loot and retreated. Rose didn't hesitate, punching a hole through their officer. One punch was all it took. Shamed and furious, the surviving pirates opened fire with their massive cannons. The explosion sent Rose spiraling into the sea. Luckily, her swimming skills saved her as she grabbed debris. She narrowly escaped death, but her luck held. The enemy ship sank, yet the primary target remained aboard. The heart of the attack was still on the white whale. Through this bloodbath, she proved her worth. Exhausted, she closed her eyes. Suddenly, flashes of her previous life flickered like a broken film. She saw her parents' proud smiles and her siblings granting her every wish. It felt so real, but it was all a lie. Human hearts are far more twisted than she ever imagined. You're a treasure when you're useful, but a scapegoat the moment your value runs out. In this life, she'd prove her strength and make her family drown in their own regret. The rescue boat finally arrived. Soldiers pulled her aboard, but Rose lay there, cold and motionless. The priest's healing magic failed completely. Suddenly, a massive, heavy hand gripped the priest's shoulder. He spun around, ready to snap, but froze. The Emperor was staring down at his pale wife. He remembered how her small body always stood in his way. With a heavy heart, he stepped forward. He shattered his own rule, never healing anyone. Soon, he'll realize she is the only woman he needs. Sweat poured down the Emperor's face as Rose's wounds began closing at a supernatural speed. Slowly, her eyes fluttered open. Seeing him there left her speechless, and the crowd was absolutely stunned. The legendary Ice Emperor had actually healed someone. But after that, he vanished for a whole day. Rose clutched her head in pure frustration. She should have just cut ties from the very beginning. Suddenly, the door creaked open. The Emperor's aide entered. "His Majesty sends his regards for your health." The third concubine followed, acting totally aggressive. You'd think she was walking into a battlefield, not a room. She was shocked by the sight of vibrant flowers and adorable dogs filling the entire space. It looked like a fairy tale cottage. The Emperor sent all of this. Everyone was burning with jealousy. A strange look crossed Rose's eyes. She expected a punishment, but instead, she got a mountain of gifts. Favors always come with a price. This was likely hush money, so she wouldn't get her hopes up. The third concubine excitedly mentioned the sixth concubine's return. Right then, the sixth concubine stormed in. Even with bandages covering her face, her rage was peaking. "Witch! What spell did you use on him?" The dogs growled, making the sixth concubine lose it. She screamed like a maniac, losing all her dignity. As guards dragged her kicking and screaming, she didn't forget to hurl one last desperate threat. "Duke Bazarov will destroy you!" Rose just smiled, waving goodbye to her for the very last time. Back at her desk, Rose's mind drifted to the name Bazarov. The real game was just beginning. That name echoed from her previous life, a ghost from Nicola's old letters. A Bazarov gala turned nightmare, a minor accident with major consequences. Lost in thought, Rose receives an invitation from that very family. A masquerade, but the timing was off months ahead of schedule. Was the sixth concubine pulling strings? Rose's investigator instincts kicked in. Bazarov wasn't just a merchant. He was a medical titan, a genius doctor shrouded in mystery. Everything else was fluff. Rose smirked, closing the book. This palace was filthy. Time for a deep clean. Meanwhile, the Emperor reminisced. His overwhelming mana wasn't just talent, it was forged in hell. That trauma fueled his power. Yet, Rose's mana felt superior. Who was she really? Her past was a complete enigma. He couldn't help but grin. He was officially hooked. Dinner time, no execution, just a feast fit for gods. Luxury served on a silver platter. Then, the real talk began. The White Whale Massacre. Evidence pointed straight at Caprice. The Charliot Empire demanded blood. No lone wolf excuses allowed. Land ceded, gold paid. Rose had officially proved her worth. But how did she know? Rose had to improvise fast. She claimed an old intel leak back in her home kingdom. A convenient lie with no receipts. But suspicions remained. "I'm a Charliot woman now," she declared, unfazed by his gaze. The Emperor's doubts lingered. Rose offered more tea on barrier. Why dump a genius? Why call her the Bat Princess? Rumors said she was a jinx. Her family treated her like cattle. Why hide such god-tier power for so long? Rose laughed. Age brought clarity and a hunger for payback. She saved them, and they made her the villain. Typical. She wasn't forgiving those bastards. Her magic was her revenge. Her pain mirrored his own, a bond forged in trauma. "Name your price," he said. The room went silent. A test of greed. What did she truly want? A city? A harem purge? The crown itself? Rose didn't care for trifles. She looked him dead in the eye. "I want the world at your side, your partner in crime. I'll burn your enemies to ash. Just call me your only one." Pure audacity. It hit the Emperor like a freight train. Deal, he thought. She was already under his skin. "Welcome, my Empress." The announcement shook the entire nation. The cold-blooded ruler finally went public with his bride. Masquerade night arrived. He was low-key worried about her safety. The Bazarovs were tight with the sixth concubine. It smelled like a trap. Stuck with paperwork, he couldn't play bodyguard himself. "Bringing your pet dog?" he teased, jealousy leaking out. No guards allowed. He insisted on a proper escort instead. Surrounded by guards, the Empress didn't bother playing nice. She just smirked and accepted the offer. The masquerade kicked off, and Rose's stunning silhouette immediately stole the spotlight from every other guest. She owned the room. While basking in the shallow flattery, a mysterious man suddenly stepped forward. He bowed with perfect grace and introduced himself as Bazarov, the host, but something felt off. Despite his respectful mask, he wore a satisfied grin. Rose glared back, her smile killed by his presence. In her past life, Rose was framed for a horrific crime as the Chariot Empire fell to Barrier. Trapped in a cold cell back then, rumors reached her that her people had simply vanished. Bazarov was the one who lied, claiming Princess Rose led the slaughter. Now, they shared a fake toast. She took a tiny sip of champagne, but her world instantly spun. She collapsed right into Bazarov's arms. "Poor Empress, you really can't handle your liquor. Let me take you somewhere to rest." Before the oblivious guests, he carried the Empress away and slipped through a hidden secret door. He descended into a dungeon filled with captives, dropping her into a chair with a twisted grin. That drink ensured the Empress wouldn't wake tonight. He turned to leave, but his dark gaze shifted. Seeing a broken man lying there, Bazarov's inner demons began to crawl to the surface. His sickest pleasure was carving up Barrier citizens. Doing it piece by piece gave him a godlike thrill. Before he could strike, a woman's voice echoed behind him. He spun around to find Rose wreathed in flames. "Thanks for the invite to the real dance, Bazarov," he gasped, unable to believe his own eyes. That cup was lethally poisoned, so how was she awake? Rose smirked. She was a living poison detector. A drop of toxin couldn't touch her. She'd played along for the truth, and it was absolutely sickening. She remembered Nicole's letter from her past life, a party where servants and guards just disappeared. After that night, Nicole had to beg her father for new staff to replace the missing ones. Rose once thought they had just fled the lifestyle. Now, the horrific truth was staring her in the face. The missing villagers and the sudden tragedies, the pieces of the puzzle were finally fitting together. This was all Bazarov's cruelty. She recalled his twisted research on the link between magic and the body. Barrier bloodlines are born with magic power. Bazarov's obsession with dissecting them had driven him completely mad. He had slaughtered his own people for his research. Pointing at a body, she asked, "Was this you?" Bazarov broke into a cold sweat but tried to act calm. "They're just scientific specimens," he stammered. He glanced at the cages. These were live gifts from the Krugs, though he labeled them as criminals. The captives instantly panicked, their desperate cries of innocence echoing throughout the dark dungeon. Rose's eyes turned stone cold. Their identities didn't matter. His twisted experiments were the real crime. And now, the monster intended to put the Empress herself on his bloody operating table. Bazarov kept babbling about deep research, but Rose wasn't buying any of his pathetic lies. Deep research? Then why the poison? She demanded. His excuses were as empty as his soul. Rose was done talking. She stepped forward, her flames radiating pure, oppressive power. "It ends now. Your plans, your research, I'm going to turn every bit of it into nothing but ash. Flames exploded across the dungeon. Witnessing her god-tier magic, Bazarov stood there, completely paralyzed with fear. Her power was absolute and terrifying. "Talk! Tell me who ordered you to come after me!" The psycho just started laughing like a maniac. He finally broke, admitting the Krug's family was behind it. The fire raged violently, but the only exit was locked tight from the outside. Realizing he was trapped, the madman decided on a final act of spite. "Let's all die together." He snatched the only key, smashed it onto the floor, and crushed it. "Everyone dies with me." For a split second, even Rose was stunned by his insanity. Then, she unleashed a torrent of fire. The flames consumed Bazarov instantly. Even as he burned, the monster showed zero signs of remorse. He just kept up that demonic laughter. This trash was actually a top medical mind in Chariot. Killing him would stall the Empire's medical progress for years. It was a heavy price to pay. Rose's brow furrowed, her boiling rage barely contained as she halted. "You'd better have an explanation for Cruikshanks." Right then, Bazarov's legs gave out, and he hit the floor. Rose realized she was running out of time. She adjusted her hair and strutted away, perfectly fine. If the medical world fell into total chaos, it would ruin innocent lives. Even as Empress, a call this heavy wasn't something she could decide solo. Sin paced outside, eyes glued to his watch while recalling his orders. The clock had finally run out. He immediately stormed in with his squad. They searched every corner, but Rose was nowhere in sight. Just then, several ragged, filthy men came scrambling out of the shadows in a desperate rush. Steel was drawn instantly, forcing the men to squeal. "Duke Bazarov threw us into that dark dungeon. A blonde woman just torched the place. We escaped by following her lead," they cried out. The guards sensed a trap and rushed to the secret passage. Suddenly, Rose emerged, looking absolutely flawless. Seeing the guards arrive on time, she coldly commanded them to seize Duke Bazarov immediately. The charges: attempted regicide and conducting twisted, illegal human experiments on living subjects. She then ordered the exit sealed to trap any accomplices. It was time to enjoy the hostless party. Walking toward a place with. As the crowd thinned, a man approached Rose for a dance. She gave a polite but icy rejection, keeping her guard up. But the invitations didn't stop. Seeing their harmless smiles, she realized they weren't Bazarov's thugs. Rose raised her hand to turn them down again, but a massive grip suddenly clamped onto her. The Emperor! He claimed he was too busy for the gala, yet here he was, stalking her from the shadows. He had been scanning the ballroom, frantic because his wife was nowhere to be found. That's when the whispers hit his ears. "Wait, where is Her Majesty the Empress? I saw her with Duke Bazarov. Are they having a private tryst?" Hearing this, the Emperor's jealousy hit its boiling point. Guards stormed the hall, following his lead toward the commotion. He finally spotted her. Instead of charging in, he lingered against the wall, eavesdropping on the chaos. Typical, his woman was causing a scene again. Even in the wreckage, every man's eyes were glued to her. His possessiveness exploded. He stepped out of the dark, dominant and ready to reclaim what was his. His face was ice and his voice was sharp, but Rose saw the raw worry beneath his cold exterior. She coolly explained the mess. Nearby, Bazarov lay broken on a stretcher, his game finally over. The Emperor looked stunned. Sensing his shock, she gave a small smirk. "Relax, I didn't kill him." He finally snapped out of it, bewildered by how she'd uncovered the truth. Rose just gave a formal bow. She dodged the question, giving him all the credit. "Human experimentation is barbaric, Your Majesty. Exposing the truth and protecting the commoners is how you earn absolute loyalty. The people's favor is everything." He was confused, yet a strange heat rose in his chest. Instinctively, he reached out and pulled Rose close. He pulled her into a deep embrace and kissed her. Bazarov's fate didn't matter. He only cared that she was safe. His familiar words triggered a flood of memories, taking Rose back to her previous life. The Emperor held supreme power, but his magic was for healing, not for the battlefield. It was a total contrast to Rose's destructive fire. Without his throne, the man was surprisingly vulnerable. He didn't care about the political fallout or barriers games. He just wanted to be near her. Rose's gaze went hollow as she drifted into thought, until a sudden commotion snapped her back. "Why are we locked in?" the guests shouted. The guards stood firm. They were still hunting Bazarov's rats. Suddenly, the Emperor reached out and interlaced his fingers with his wife's. His voice was laced with pure affection. "Let's go. This mess has nothing to do with us." That word, "us," stunned her. When he invited her again, she smiled and finally accepted. The guards outside nearly choked on their breath. They'd never seen the imperial couple look so cozy. Was this really the cold emperor who used to avoid women? By morning, the news was everywhere. 2 major nobles had fallen in one night, sending massive shockwaves throughout the entire empire. Bazarov's mask was ripped off, exposing the Cruz family as his secret puppet masters. While Bazarov's fate remained a mystery, the 6th Concubines clan was officially finished. Memories of their intimacy played in Rose's head. She couldn't understand why the Emperor was suddenly so obsessed. Her thoughts were cut short when Sin arrived. His intel had been the key to blowing the case wide open. When she handed him a massive reward, Sin hesitated. It felt like way too much money. But for Rose, it wasn't just payment. It was an apology for his suffering and scars from her past life. Sensing her heavy mood, Sin suggested something unexpected, a shopping trip to clear her head. Strolling through the city breeze, the weight on Rose's shoulders finally began to lift. She wanted to treat him, but Sin was a total workaholic who didn't care about anything but the mission. Rose sighed, ready to give up, when Sin suddenly stopped dead in his tracks. He was staring at a pet shop. Rose joked about his muzzle obsession, but Sin had other plans. He wanted to buy collars for her dogs, red and blue. They're a perfect match. Looking at the vibrant collars, he imagined the Emperor and Empress walking their pets together. The thought was pure magic. Despite Rose's protests, Sin paid for the gifts with his own coin. Was this what being obsessed with his wife felt like? She was out shopping with a total heartthrob. The Emperor could only mope at home, replaying that heavenly embrace with his wife in his head. At the gala, she couldn't stop blushing as her heart hammered against her ribs. He'd fallen hard for her, but before he could even process these chaotic emotions, disaster struck with Camila. Her sheer stupidity dragged her once legendary ducal family into the abyss. They hit rock bottom, and everyone ghosted her. She was forced to live like a fugitive. Utterly frantic and broken, she staked her entire future on the Emperor alone. She weaponized the Emperor's sister's name to trick the unsuspecting royal physician. She lured the doctor out, but when he refused to play along with her scheme, she snapped like a feral beast, hysterically shrieking at him to fix her ruined face. She even brandished a pistol to force an audience with the Emperor. "I'm the only one. I'm the perfect Empress, not that brat," she roared, her hand trembling on the trigger. Despite her shaking, the doctor didn't flinch, forcing her to play her final, desperate trump card. She'd already forged letters to the entire royal family using her beloved brother's name. That meant the Emperor's own brother, the doctor himself. His calm facade finally shattered. Luckily, palace guards stormed in at that exact moment, ending the nightmare. They hauled Camila straight to the dungeon while he rushed to brief the Emperor. The Emperor didn't fear his brothers. The real threat was his terrifying sister, a ruthless empress who purged her own family for power. Just thinking of her gave him a migraine. But fate is cruel. Just as Rose returned from her shopping spree, she delivered a letter from the Empress announcing a sudden royal visit in just days. Rose was stunned. This family's bloodline was absolutely insane. If they weren't emperors, they were empresses. They were basically built for world domination. The doctor sighed, noting the Empress played nice with the Charlotte Empire for show. But in reality, she loathed the Emperor. Rose's mood instantly plummeted. In her past life, Rose had done fuel business with the Empress's nation. She'd never met her, but after dying once, what was there left to fear? Having cheated death, she was actually hyped to face this legendary woman. She wanted to see the Empress who made the Emperor shake. Rose was ready. The Emperor was powerless when she arrived. She decided to make a dramatic entrance. With a snap of her fingers, she commanded the water from a distant fountain. She drenched Rose completely. "Refreshing, isn't it?" She smirked under the Emperor's gaze. He knew this would happen. Rose was fuming, cursing the Empress in her head. Since she was royalty, Rose had no choice but to smile through the disrespect. Rose tried playing nice, calling her sister. But the Empress wasn't having it. That title gave the Empress the creeps. Luckily, the Emperor actually showed some backbone. He told Rose to dry off before hosting their guest, but there was a hidden motive. The real reason for the Empress's hostility? A mysterious letter she'd recently received. Camila's family claimed Rose was a manipulative snake who was playing the Emperor. She crashed the Duke's ball just to spy on them and caught the couple together. Seeing them so close in public only fueled her curiosity about this mysterious sister-in-law. But now, Rose just looked like a fragile brat who'd blow away in a breeze. After surviving 2 lifetimes, Rose wasn't about to let this insult slide. She'd had enough. If that's how it is, let's settle this with swords. The Emperor sipped his tea, knowing Rose had just challenged a master to her doom. Despite her defeat, the Empress saw her in a new light. That fusion of blade and flame was legendary. Just the memory made the Empress gulp in sheer terror. She never expected such insane power from someone so modest. Rose accepted her win gracefully, suddenly recalling a past life revolution. Back when Scorpio shook the world, did she just find a new trump card to flex? One second she's sister, the next she's old hag. Honestly, every relative needs a savage nickname, right? The Empress turned beet red, barking that she should be called sister. Watching the drama unfold, the Emperor didn't know whether to laugh or explode. He was already done. Rose stood her ground, trolling like a total pro. The terrifying Empress, who crushed villains easily, was finally humbled by Rose's divine blade. While soaking in petals, she questioned her very existence, shook by her sister-in-law's skills. Luckily, Rose had no intention of shaming her, which was a total plot twist. But then again, she'd splashed her with water and constantly teased her. But this Empress had zero ties to her past life. That didn't mean she was safe in this timeline. Clinging to that hope, the emperor finally confronted his sister. As a sovereign, she kept hovering around Chariot. She even crashed Duke Bazarov's high society ball. If she claimed she only cared about the empress, he wasn't buying it. Seeing no way out, she spilled everything. With Rose gone, she confessed the real tea. The Scorpio Empire was currently being torn apart by revolution. Snatching the prime minister was just the start of this elaborate coup. She needed medicine to regain control, hence the Duke's invite. She didn't expect him to leave on a stretcher. After all that talk, she just wanted to borrow the emperor's personal royal physician. Top-tier healing magic was way more clutch than basic medical gear. Or maybe he could just send his army to crush those rebel rats. Are you delusional? The emperor's words only met her cold, elitist sneer. In her twisted mind, he had zero right to say no. Chariot was dirt poor, barely even able to afford winter heating. They relied on Scorpio's oil riches. If he played ball, she'd tolerate that girl as empress. The aide broke into a cold sweat. She'd pulled this before, using any tiny leverage to make these toxic, delusional demands. The emperor was trapped, especially with their oil supply on the line. Suddenly, two of her soldiers burst in with an urgent SOS. Disaster struck Scorpio as the imperial army torched the church's home village. The citizens revolted, screaming for the empress's head on a platter. Even the prime minister surrendered. Total panic washed over her instantly. She never ordered that fire. She was being framed. Realizing she was powerless, the emperor kicked her out. She was fuming. Going back meant a death sentence, which was exactly the outcome the cold-blooded emperor wanted. Useless people didn't deserve a second of his time. With a dismissive wave, he ordered his sister's immediate arrest, to hand her over to the rebels. He wouldn't risk his oil for a fugitive. These siblings were truly cut from the same ruthless cloth. She smashed her teacup in rage, screaming, "You'd sell me out too?" Despite appearances, the emperor always knew that without his magic, he was less than human in her eyes. She'd even drawn her blade on him as a child, hunting for his life. Just like now, the sword in her hand was thirsty for blood. A sharp slice echoed as blood painted the floor. The sounds of a brutal struggle erupted. Rose, out walking the dogs, caught the commotion and sighed deeply. That old hag really had zero chill. To save his people, the emperor chose betrayal over blood, but took a nasty hit to the neck. Only his healing magic saved him. He was a goner. The empress was leaking pure, unadulterated killing intent. Ready to slaughter anyone in her path, the royal guards were mere fodder for her. Without her brother, and with just a bit more mana, the Charliot Empire would be hers. Every word dripped with bitterness. In her mind, that throne belonged solely to her. Yet her brother stole it, and now he planned to sell her to Scorpio rebels. She gripped her blade with both hands, aiming straight for her brother's jugular, ready to seize the crown until a massive fireball suddenly crashed the party. A roaring wall of flames erupted, separating her from the emperor in an instant. Rose strutted in, heels clicking, casually calling her old auntie. Talk about zero chill. Her breezy apology for being late finally allowed the emperor's frayed nerves to relax. A wave of relief washed over him, leaving him stunned by his own newfound calm. Clutching his bleeding neck, he looked so vulnerable. Rose wasn't about to let this slide. Anyone daring to harm her husband was about to pay a lethal price. Ghostly flames lunged at the empress. She frantically tried to parry them with her steel. Her blade melted instantly. Before she could even blink, death was staring her down. Fireballs rained down. The blistering heat pinned her in place, making escape impossible. Then came that voice again. "Old auntie, are you really that desperate for power? Don't you care if your kingdom burns?" Rose smirked, her mana surging with confidence. Even having seen it before, the emperor was absolutely floored by her raw power. Seeing his sister's terrified face was like looking into a mirror of his childhood. The empress was tossed into the dungeon, reeling from Rose's overwhelming god-tier strength. He sighed. Japan had truly found a lethal weapon. She only drew breath because the emperor wanted her back in Scorpio. But the logistics were a total nightmare. Scorpio's teleportation arrays only worked on inanimate objects. No living souls allowed. Not even corpses made the cut. Plus, if Scorpio collapsed, the oil supply was toast. Rose knew the reports weren't cap. Her past life memories warned of an impending crisis. After Scorpio's revolution, the global oil trade had completely spiraled into absolute chaos. Back then, not even the mighty Charliot could get their hands on a drop. Without fuel, thousands froze. Suddenly, keeping old auntie alive became a secondary concern. She had to rewrite history. Luckily, the emperor wasn't breaking a sweat over it. She grinned. She had a high-profit master plan. He just needed to trust her. Her heels clicked ominously, echoing through the cold, damp shadows of the dungeon. She kicked the iron bars, startling the empress. Rose was definitely not in the mood. Still rocking that explosive temper. "I see," Rose teased with a sugary, sweet smile. "Since you're heading back anyway, why not do your darling brother a little favor? A master swordswoman and an invincible mage together, these two would be absolutely unstoppable. Just like that, the former prisoner was being escorted back to Scorpio by Rose. The revolution had gutted the church. The nuns and orphans had simply vanished. The public was outraged. When news broke of the Empress's return, crowds flooded the streets. But wait, leading the pack was a total stranger, the legendary Empress of Charliot. She had personally come to return Layla. The people began cheering wildly for Rose. The uproar reached a grimy, hidden basement. Is the Empress actually back? The young revolutionary leader scoffed, his face twisted in pure, unbridled contempt. Returning meant certain death. Thinking she was a total fool, he stood up to check. He popped the hatch and nearly fainted from shock. "Yo, Mr. Revolutionary Leader!" Rose knelt down with a gentle gaze. To the citizens following her, she was a total icon. But their hero was shaking. How did she find this place? He couldn't wrap his head around it. Rose immediately ordered his arrest. She wasn't just there to clear the Empress's name from the church fire. She claimed she supported the revolution. Even the crowd was ready to back her up. Suddenly, the old man hiding in the basement was dragged into the light. The citizens were floored. This was the Prime Minister. Wasn't he on the Empress's side? Why was he chilling with the rebels? Rose smirked. This was the true face of the revolution. The people were skeptical until church-stamped coins started spilling out of their pockets. Fake imperial flags and uniforms were found everywhere. The traitors tried to talk their way out. They didn't expect the hidden orphans and nuns to be rescued and point them out. The truth hit the citizens like a truck. Every single atrocity was actually their doing. The imperial army had been framed. The leader's blood began to boil with pure rage. He broke his chains while the knight was distracted and snatched a sword. In a desperate move, he lunged to kill Rose, but the threat was intercepted midair. The Empress stepped in with pure elegance. "If you want a piece of her, come through me." Rose didn't even care she could handle these weaklings. Even now, the two just kept bickering. The Empress wouldn't sleep until she personally dealt with these snakes. She raised her blade, looking ready to end him, but then just gave him a light kick. He went flying, but Rose was unimpressed. "That's it? Seriously?" she complained. But she wasn't done. Next up was the biggest traitor, the Prime Minister. The Empress was fuming. He'd volunteered to stop the rebels, yet achieved zero results. They were working together the whole time. The more she thought, the angrier she got. She drove her sword through his shoulder, letting his screams echo through the air. A quick death was too good for him. Torture first, then the guillotine. The rebel leader lunged again for one final stand. Talk about main character syndrome. Rose just smirked and blasted him with a fireball, leaving him charred. The Empress immediately blocked for Rose, refusing to let her steal the spotlight. Rose placed a hand on the Prime Minister. The man froze, terrified of her touch. She unleashed her flames with a smile. Revenge is best served personally. After all, her terrifying grin had the remaining rebels paralyzed with pure fear. Thanks to her, the revolutionaries were exposed for the frauds they were. The truth about the church fire was finally out in the open. Judgment and death were all that awaited them. Rose couldn't be more satisfied. But the Empress wanted answers. How did she know about this conspiracy? Rose remembered everything. In her past life, the PM was tight with Barrier over oil deals. He even bragged about his betrayal to her father back then. He prioritized profit over his country, while the Empress was being executed. "Why should I tell you? I only follow my king's orders," Rose thought. Her mission was to make her aunt the true Empress of Scorpio. Rose silenced her with a gesture. The Empress felt a chill. Her authority was being challenged. It felt awkward, but something else took her by surprise. The citizens were actually grateful. She'd been on her own since the late Emperor died. She'd cut her hair and fought hard to rule. Rose hadn't planned to help, but she couldn't stand seeing someone framed not after her own family's betrayal. Seeing her aunt's relief, Rose couldn't hold back her tears. One tragedy was enough. Her past life memories became her ultimate weapon. By exposing the truth behind the Scorpio Revolution, she didn't just obliterate the puppet masters, she secured the Empress's throne forever. Rose eyed her elderly aunt. For solving the crisis, the Empress offered a massive payout, 30% of Scorpio's total oil profits. Clutching the contract in her hands, Rose felt satisfied, but the Empress was low-key salty. Losing that much wealth stung. But the real insult was Rose forcing her to travel in a prisoner's carriage. She couldn't let it go, yet Rose still called her stingy. Those were literal oil fields. Charlotte was the official beneficiary, but to Rose, the Empress and the nation were one. Seeing Rose's shock made the Empress feel awkward, but the truth finally clicked. No wonder the Camila and Bazarov dukes were no match for her. Rose smirked, smoothing her hair. "Me? Accept such praise?" she teased. Honestly, this time she could have demanded half the oil revenue, but she didn't. That flex chilled the bystanders to the bone. They expected a royal explosion, but the Empress just gave a knowing grin. Back in the dungeon, Rose promised to save her. She doubted it, never imagining she'd actually be rescued. But Rose proved she was a powerhouse, brilliant, brave, and noble. Deep down, she respected Rose, though she still called her a demon and told her to get lost. That's impossible. You're the Emperor's sister, after all. We need your guidance. I won't admit you're his wife. Oh, so he is your brother. How shocking! Rose's taunt forced her to face her inner child, seeing her brother be manipulated by the former ruler. It hurt, but the recent drama between them still left a bitter taste. She still detested him, but she knew she only survived thanks to Rose. Thanks? Wow, you actually know that word, Rose joked. The Empress huffed proudly. She walked Rose out, unexpectedly telling her to take care of her health. Their sibling spat was minor. They should visit each other more from now on. Rose didn't buy the sincerity for a second, and she was right. As she turned to leave, splash! The Empress doused her with cold water again. Don't catch a cold, brat, Rose smirked, politely ignoring the old lady's antics. They underestimated the useless princess. Effortlessly, she solved the Empire's century-old heating crisis and snagged a massive stake in the nation's oil exports. Anyone else would be reeling, but Rose was frustrated. She could have taken more. Why is she so stingy? She sighed. Meanwhile, the Emperor was in pure disbelief. His sister actually handed over 30% of the revenue after that nightmare. She even asked his wife to schedule frequent visits. It was wild, it seemed. His sister was totally impressed with his wife. He wondered what Rose did. Rose just blanked. She threw water at me. Is that called satisfaction? She thought, but flashed a brilliant smile regardless. I didn't do much. The Empress just has a big heart. Relieved, the Emperor looked up, only to spot a tiny scratch on her ring finger, completely ignoring the $300 billion contract in her hand. He reached out, grabbing her hand. It was just dry skin from the harsh weather, but his heart still raced with worry despite knowing she was invincible. Once he was sure she was safe, he relaxed, his focus locked on her hand. He didn't even notice her blushing until she whispered, "Your Majesty?" He quickly let go, hiding his face from her shy gaze. "You've worked hard. Head back first," she whispered. Her heart hammered against her ribs as the air grew heavy with sudden heat. A simple touch of their hands made her resolve crumble. She felt a wave of bashful heat wash over her. Yet she couldn't help but crave more. Thinking back to Rose's absolute badass energy during the rescue, he never imagined the fierce warrior could also pull off this adorable, girl-next-door charm. Damn, this felt like falling in love. Meanwhile, news of Rose securing Scorpio's oil rights spread like wildfire, dominating every headline. In a kingdom where winter's bite is lethal without heat, the people hailed their empress as a savior. Of course, the emperor's jealous concubines were fuming in the shadows, but one woman stood apart from the bitter crowd. Nina, the elusive second concubine. With the fifth and sixth concubines kicked out, Nina decided it was time to play besties. At first glance, she seemed like an ordinary, unassuming princess. Yet, using nothing but her raw influence, Rose had conquered an oil empire and won the Empress's grace. Back in her homeland, the shockwaves were massive. The royals were shook to their core, finding out the Emperor had officially recognized Rose's royal status. Her father's blood boiled with regret. If he'd known she was this valuable, he'd never have let her walk down that aisle. Without his useless daughter to bankroll his life and do his chores, he was drowning. Exhaustion was his new shadow. To make matters worse, a formal warning arrived from the Empress of Scorpio, accusing him of backing the revolution. Did Rose snitch? He was literally vibrating with pure rage. He stared at his wife, nursing a massive headache. Nearby, his spoiled brats weren't helping at all. They just threw shade. Nicola should have married him instead, they scoffed. Besides being a workhorse, what's Rose got? Seeing her father spiraling, Nicola cooked up another toxic scheme to save their skins. We need a fall guy, and fast. Don't worry, Papa. I've already found the perfect victim. Her brother Aerie bragged about his new catch, the third princess from a neighboring kingdom. To save his own neck, he'd throw his beloved to the wolves without blinking. This family was rotten to the core. Cut to Rose, who was living her best life, sipping tea with effortless grace. Thanks to her legendary power moves, even the third concubine and her clique had been won over. And let's be real, it helped that the simp emperor had finally announced her as his one and only empress. She couldn't just ignore their sudden kindness, but one particular letter kept her on edge. It was from Lady Nina. Even though she played it cool and showed zero hostility, Rose knew better than to trust a snake after what happened with the sixth concubine. She needed intel, but the moment she brought up Nina's name, the entire room went dead silent. I hear Nina's parties are the talk of the town, Rose probed. Haven't any of you gone? We have, they whispered, but the vibe is off. Everyone praised Nina in public, but clearly, no one actually wanted to be her friend. They quickly swore loyalty, shouting, "You're our only empress." Rose's red flags were screaming. She didn't want to snub everyone, and Nina's letter was just a casual invite whenever she was free. Fine, she'd walk into the lion's den and see for herself. Suddenly, a girl with a sharp bob cut spilled the tea about Barrier and the second princess. Ah, home sweet home. Rose wondered what mess Nicola had made now. Apparently, Nicola was hunting for a new secretary. She claimed it was hush-hush, while simultaneously leaking every single detail. But when it came to the actual name, she went totally silent. What a massive facepalm. Nicola was already running her mouth before the plan even started. All those security leaks in Barrier? Definitely Nicola's fault. But something didn't add up. For a girl who couldn't shut up, she was being suspiciously tight-lipped about this one secretary. A chill ran down Rose's spine as a memory from her past life flickered intel Sin had once shared. She couldn't recall the exact date, but she remembered the man. He was the only one who could make her lose her absolute cool. A man who held the world in his palms, but only desired the Empress's heart. Unfortunately, his bride was such a masterpiece that vultures never stopped circling. That creep, Uwe, finally landed in the dark dungeon. If he weren't developing those rapid recovery heart pills, the Emperor would have ended his miserable life a long time ago. Instead of showing gratitude, he dared to flirt with the Empress right to his face, back when he was the favorite of the previous ruler. The current Emperor was treated as nothing but a tool, a mere healing machine. Constantly bullied by others, he learned to swallow his pain. Rage was the only emotion he ever truly knew. But everything shifted the moment the Empress appeared. Raoul saw the change clearly, even if the Emperor refused to admit it. He couldn't ignore that woman's magnetic power. The mere thought of her fueled a growing, dark obsession within his mind. He realized that marrying off such a divine human tool was a waste. From the start, he should have claimed the Empress for himself instead of treating her like a lab rat. Clearly, the dungeon was far too comfortable for him. The Emperor burned with the urge to execute him, but death was too merciful. Since he despised human tools so much, he would spend his entire life serving as a research instrument. Meanwhile, a storm was brewing in Rose's heart. Rose was drowning in unease. Ever since the last tea party, the thought of her sister Nicola selecting a new secretary haunted her. She simply couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. In her previous life, she remembered that secretary being hired right after she departed for the front lines of the war. Although the timing was off, there was no doubt this man was destined to be the ultimate scapegoat. Yet, she never even saw his face before she was sent to the guillotine. He was just like her, a shadow behind the scenes, exploited until there was nothing left. Recalling the crowd screaming for her blood, she no longer cared if those people lived or died. But she couldn't stand seeing another soul used and discarded just like she was. She was so lost in these dark thoughts that she completely ignored concubine Sasa sitting right there. "Are you feeling unwell, Your Majesty?" "I apologize." The sudden concern caught her off guard, but a spark of genuine curiosity flickered within her. If it were Sasa, how would she react to meeting a criminal like the Rose from her past life? Before she could finish the thought, a vivid image of her past self, rotting in a prison cell, flashed before her eyes. She remembered Sasa praying for her. Rose chuckled softly. She used to think she was a fool. The answer was obvious. Why even ask? In this life, she simply had to treat her well. Elsewhere, a young man with godlike healing powers was being raised as a machine by his own father. His life was an endless cycle of exhausting treatments. Every day was a battle against fatigue, curing mountains of wounded warriors. As a witness to this nightmare, Duke Rolf became a permanent thorn in the Emperor's side. Every time their paths crossed, the Emperor felt a wave of pure nausea. But to ensure the people could be healed, he had to keep that miserable life going. Suddenly, the Emperor's permanent scowl softened. It was as if a weight had lifted. Today, the Empress looked radiant, almost like she had a glow around her. "Did something happen? You look pale," he muttered, confused. Why was he even here? "I'm heading to my chambers," he realized, stunned that his feet had instinctively led him straight to his wife's residence. Cold sweat began to beat on his forehead. Rose, calling him Your Majesty, pulled out a silk handkerchief and gently dabbed his brow. It was a moment of pure, unexpected shock. The Emperor stood paralyzed, unable to find his voice when she invited him into her room. In the past, he would have exploded, but now, like a puppet on strings, he simply stammered, "All right." The attendants and the entire group stood there with their jaws on the floor. She poured home-brewed red tea for them both. It turned out, Rose only invited him because she needed a way to intercept her father's upcoming secretary. According to her memories, the man about to take that position was an absolute genius, a top-tier talent currently residing within the kingdom of Verso. She needed to make a trip. Surprisingly, the Emperor didn't just agree, he insisted on accompanying her. He had already received an official invitation from Verso anyway. She felt a mix of relief and genuine shock. Even his own aide thought the master was acting incredibly fickle. He had literally refused to go just this morning. But this was undeniable proof. Rose was finally being recognized. "Thank you, Your Majesty," she whispered. But his next words were even more stunning. He had always claimed the servant Sin was completely useless, yet today, he allowed the Empress to bring Sin along. As he spoke, he shot the servant a sharp, knowing look. For the first time, he praised Sin's tea, calling the brew absolutely exquisite. It was a rare sight, seeing the emperor's icy mask finally start to crack. Trusting his wife's keen eye for talent, the sovereign prepared to make his move. Her soft words of gratitude stopped him cold, echoing the warnings of her change. A sudden pang hit his chest. Like it or not, she was swaying his heart. He pulled her hand to his cheek, seeking warmth like a child, craving comfort. The looming shadows vanished as he gazed upon his wife's shy, blushing face. Confusion swirled within him, but Rose had only one goal in mind: cold revenge. Casting mercy aside, she journeyed to Verso to hunt down the mysterious secretary. They shared a carriage, yet a heavy, suffocating silence stretched between the two. Watching the brooding emperor, Rose felt a storm of doubt rising in her soul. She couldn't shake the memory of him pressing her hand against his face. His lingering glances throughout the long trip made her feel incredibly on edge. She missed his old freezing indifference. This new warmth was far more terrifying. "Is something on your mind?" His sudden question caught her completely off guard. Flashing a nervous smile, she quickly redirected his attention to the passing scenery. The shop's unique architecture was stunning. Every corner of this town felt magical. "Should we explore together?" She froze. Was this really the cold emperor speaking? The assistant interrupted. "We've reached the capital early." "To the hotel, Your Majesty?" "No, we're wandering the streets first. Make the necessary preparations immediately." To everyone who knew him, the emperor was a workaholic who cared for nothing. Seeing him toss his schedule aside for a stroll was a total shocker. Rose stepped out, heart racing. This felt like a completely different world today. Forget the schemes. She just wanted to enjoy the view like a happy child. Pushing the sadness away, she took his arm. It felt like a real date. Despite her nerves, the vibrant landscape soon had her heart fluttering with excitement. From blacksmiths to bakeries, every building was a masterpiece. She explored with wonder. Passing two ladies, she accidentally overheard a juicy lead about a local mansion. She suddenly remembered her mission. She wasn't just here to sightsee with him. Finding Chloe was the priority. Perhaps the local bookstore held the answers. Her instincts were dead on. One simple question was all it took to learn. The owner knew Chloe well, a tragic soul, dealt a cruel hand by fate. Kicked out of the palace for no reason, she was left with nothing. Blacklisted from every shop in the nation, she had nowhere left to run. Now, she was reportedly struggling to survive in the gritty entertainment district. A wave of pity hit the emperor as he flipped through a book. A beautiful couple's ring design caught his eye, sparking a sudden, bold idea. While Rose celebrated her intel, he led her straight into a luxury jeweler. He remembered the flowers she gave him and decided it was payback time. It was the classic gift girls gave their crushes during the spring festival. You knew the meaning, didn't you? He finally felt a sense of relief. Now, it was his turn to return the favor with something truly grand. Without blinking, he dropped a fortune on a rare, limited edition bracelet for her. He spent gold like it was pocket change, radiating pure, unadulterated, royal energy. Rose smiled, genuinely happy that the emperor wanted to spend this time together. Unexpectedly, the emperor cornered her, demanding she offer him her hand. Staring at the fresh jewelry, Rose realized this gift was meant for her. The emperor took her hand, personally fastening the delicate bracelet onto her. "Do not remove this," he commanded, his voice laced with iron. Confused, Rose pondered the gift's meaning within the hotel's silent luxury. She craved the nightlife's chaos to escape the emperor's suffocating presence. Sharing a room was a total shock. She had to stay calm. Tying her hair, she asked for guards. The emperor insisted on coming. She shot him down instantly. His divine visuals would attract every eye. He'd cause a literal riot just by breathing the same air. Seeing his annoyance, Rose played her ultimate winning card to stay solo. What kind of wife takes her husband to a party district? That tsundere attitude worked. The cold emperor fell for the trap instantly. He played it cool, but strictly ordered her to keep the bracelet. Finally free, Rose headed out with guards, her suspicions still burning bright. Was it magic tracking? Why else was he so obsessed with it? A desperate cry echoed. A girl knelt, begging a man for mercy. It was Chloe. Her target was begging her pathetic brother, Aerie. Listening in, Rose quickly grasped the tragic stakes of their conversation. Chloe begged for her brother's life, but Aerie coldly turned his back. Seeing Rose, Chloe lunged like a drowning woman toward a lifeboat. Her brother was dying, and she was desperate for medical funds. This was Rose's golden ticket. She hired Chloe for a lifetime. At Chloe's home, the truth emerged. She was a disgraced court secretary. A general's rejected advances led to her ruin and a massive fine. Now, she was drowning in debt with a dying brother to save. Barrier's job offer was a trap. They never intended to help her. They were just using her brother as a leash. Rose was thrilled. She promised healing and total freedom, leaving Chloe absolutely floored. Who is she? Chloe wondered. How can she speak such power? Rose snapped her fingers. Meet the Empress of the Charlioid Empire. Chloe froze. The legendary Empress was standing right before her eyes. While they talked elsewhere, the Emperor paced their room like a beast. He was losing it. No matter her strength, he couldn't stop worrying. Memories of her haunted him. He was losing his legendary composure. He felt himself changing. Then, finally, his Empress returned to him. Chloe entered the high-end hotel, trembling at the sheer opulence. Moved by her kindness, Rose secured Chloe's future before facing the Emperor. She exposed Barrier's corruption and their exploitation of true talent. The Emperor was disgusted. Such a pathetic way to run a nation. To her brother, dating was a career. Talent didn't stand a chance. Even the guards facepalmed at his obsession with romantic pursuits. Rose whispered a proposal that made the Emperor's eyes light up. A villainous smirk appeared. Their shared plan was honestly terrifying to witness. Back in her room in pink pajamas, Rose made a shocking discovery. The Emperor had been waiting for her in bed for ages. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Flashbacks of their first kiss flooded her mind. As they lay together, her nerves were completely shot. Uncertain of what to do, the Emperor turned and gazed at her tenderly. He pulled her close. He gently rested his chin on her forehead. Already trembling, she froze under his touch. Was it finally happening tonight? It was the Grand National Foundation banquet for the Kingdom of Verso. Rose and the Emperor arrived hand in hand, but they weren't alone. Chloe, the exiled secretary, was with them. The moment she stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. The once smiling reception official froze. His cheerful expression vanished instantly. Seeing a ghost from the past clearly rattled him. Returning to this familiar place made Chloe's skin crawl. The memories of being bullied and slandered rushed back. If it weren't for Empress Rose, she would never have stepped foot in this nightmare again. But the biggest shock was the truth. This couple was actually the Emperor and Empress of Charlio. They had literally saved her from hell. Now, she was finally back at the gala as a winner. She felt completely reborn. However, as soon as the royals appeared, the elite crowd swarmed them. Just as she started to panic, the unexpected happened. "Miss, are you feeling unwell?" It was a voice she could never forget. A voice that still haunted her dreams. The man clearly thought he was hitting on a random beauty. He didn't realize it was her. His attitude flipped in a split second. He grabbed her aggressively, screaming for everyone to hear. "She's a criminal, a manipulative snake. Guards, drag this woman out of here right now." Enough was enough. Chloe's hand moved in a blur, delivering a sharp slap to his face. "You're a married man doing disgusting things. You make my skin crawl." Her words exposed his trashy behavior. Even his own wife was left speechless. Enraged, the man tried to shove Chloe, but Rose intervened. "Hey, what exactly do you think you're doing to my friend?" Rose asked with a chilling smile. The man turned pale. He never imagined the lowly secretary he trampled on was now Charliote's treasure. "Any objections?" Rose announced, sending shockwaves through the entire room. By claiming Chloe, Charlio now held every single one of Verso's deepest secrets. That was Chloe's hidden value. Feeling a deep bond with her, Rose looked toward the Emperor. "Right, Your Majesty?" Of course, the power couple was perfectly in sync. Suddenly, someone else snapped. Aerie ditched his dates and came charging toward them like a madman. He didn't care about his image anymore. "That woman belongs to me," he bellowed. He didn't expect his weak sister to reclaim her golden hair and steal his prize. Malice flashed in his eyes, but the Emperor's murderous glare stopped him cold. He was so terrified he collapsed on the floor. "Who are you yelling at? My wife?" The Emperor officially declared Chloe a member of Charlio. "If you want war, just keep talking." Both men were paralyzed with fear. Seeing the Emperor protect his woman was peak main character energy. Aerie crawled back home empty-handed. His father was livid that the secretary wasn't with him. The old man slammed the table, demanding answers. Aerie didn't dare admit his own stupidity. He couldn't say he lost her while flirting. He just sighed, pretending to be a victim. "That secretary was so disrespectful. She dared to defy the barriers. We must punish her." Hearing his family's empty threats, Aerie looked resigned. But she's with the Emperor of Charliot now. The entire family froze in shock. They thought the Princess of Verso had handled the secretary. "How did she end up in Charlia?" his sister suggested, begging Rose for help. Aerie just shook his head. To him, Rose was still just a girl hiding behind men. "She's the definition of a useless coward, but maybe if we talk to her, we can win. We need a solution before we lose everything. Our position is on the line. She's still the same old Rose. If we play our cards right, she'll fold." His sister kept yapping, totally ignoring his misery. Should he stay and get thrashed, or just run? His father's blood boiled with every word. He cursed Rose for being useless since the secretary was missing. He'd been drowning in work for ages. Then, another massive mountain of documents landed on his desk. And that was just the start. His father's back was screaming, and his shoulders were about to snap. The worker dropped the formalities with Aerie. "The king orders you to grind through every remaining file." Ignoring Aerie's protests, he loosened his tie and dipped out to go have some fun. Mom always backed Dad. Before leaving, she mocked her son for failing to bring back the secretary. whether he found a sub or did it himself. If things went south, it was all on Eri. Seeing them leave for a gala while he stayed behind, Eri was absolutely seething with rage. Was this family actually for real? Meanwhile, Rose and the squad finally made it back to Charlotte. Coming from the south, the northern chill hit different. "Your Majesty," Rose said softly to the Emperor. He offered to let them rest first. Catching the Emperor's gaze, Rose couldn't help but blush. They'd been sharing a bed lately, but it was strictly PG. Still, she felt truly cherished. She'd never felt more valued. Lost in her feels, she drifted away until a voice broke the silence. Chloe's concerned voice snapped her back to reality. Rose jumped, totally caught off guard. Chloe's jaw dropped. The sheer luxury of the Imperial room was straight out of a dream. Burial was okay, but living with her brother there was impossible. Rose was a literal angel. She was so glad she dodged that family. She vowed to become the ultimate right hand. But plot twist, Rose wasn't her boss. "Don't worry, your new employer is coming," Rose teased. A creep was flirting with the Empress. The jealous Emperor didn't flinch, even helping with introductions. Rose worked so hard to bring the secretary back, only to hand her over to Sasa. Everyone was shook. Why would she help her own rival with a major presentation? Looking at Chloe, Sasa felt a pang of pity. A girl this devoted couldn't be bad. She wanted to help, but let's be real. Chloe was way too talented for her current position. A gem like her belonged at the top. Beside the Emperor, she'd finally reach her full potential. Rose was stunned. Sasa actually valued her people? This was a whole new side of her. Sasa was impulsive, but she had a heart of gold. Putting Chloe there felt right. Seeing Sasa's worried face, Rose smiled. "Don't sweat it. I've got this handled," she said. "I'll find the best mage to heal Chloe's brother." Both girls were moved to tears instantly. To save her brother, Sasa reached out. An Imperial recommendation was a massive deal. Nobody expected Chloe to suddenly flip the switch into absolute beast mode. She started firing off questions like a pro, aiming for maximum profit for Charlotte. Every single point was a bullseye. Her only goal was making the Empire thrive. This was peak secretary energy. Watching her work, Rose just breathed a sigh of relief. The Burial Royals definitely didn't hype her up for nothing. Chloe was the real deal. Soon, the Emperor received a proposal from Sasa. The third concubine was finally making moves. It was a plan to dominate the spice trade and boost exports efficiently. The details were insane, meticulous, and ready to launch. It left the Emperor totally baffled. He knew this had Chloe's fingerprints all over it, especially after Rose's recent suggestion. Rose had pushed for Chloe to stay with Sasa. The Emperor was low-key impressed. Sasa wasn't like the others. She was cautious and never asked for favors. Until now. The Emperor figured, why not? Giving her a shot seemed like a solid power move. He sent word to Sasa immediately. If she delivered results, the rewards would be legendary. No prize would be off-limits. Meanwhile, Rose was spiraling with worry. Chloe's brother's health was tanking. Even the top court doctors were completely stumped. Chloe's brother was fading from a cancer-like curse. Rose had made a solemn vow to save him. Failing him would shatter Chloe's heart. Observing the Empress's darkening mood, the court physician proposed seeking the Emperor's aid. Perhaps he held a secret cure. Yet the Emperor's verdict was grim. Magic was useless against terminal decay. Rose's hope flickered out. He tried staying detached, but seeing Rose's despair pierced his cold heart. Finally, emotion overruled logic. He'd solve her problems, though his pride remained stubborn. He claimed this was for the Empire's sake, definitely not to please the Empress. Confused, Rose followed him deep into a dark, hidden dungeon. What secrets lay below? Beyond the cells, a ghost appeared, a man wearing a wicked, playful smirk. "Long time no see, Your Majesty," Rose gasped. Bazarov was supposed to be dead. Shock froze her. Seeing her unease, the Emperor ordered a guard to explain the situation. It turned out Bazarov was a medical genius with peerless, non-magical skills. His raw talent earned him a pardon, though he remained a secret prisoner researcher. The Emperor loathed him, yet Bazarov's medical prowess was unrivaled across the continent. Simply put, if he couldn't cure the boy, then all hope was truly lost. Rose was stunned. To help her keep a promise, the Emperor revealed his darkest secret. Bazarov's gaze locked onto the Empress with predatory curiosity. He looked at her like a prize. The Emperor bristled, his jealousy flaring instantly. Bazarov flirted shamelessly. Unfazed, Rose fired back with her own sharp wit. The Confiles date, the jealous Emperor seethed nearby. Undeterred, Bazarov's provocations only grew more daring. "Since you scorched my heart with magic, my soul is already yours," he purred. Despite the Emperor's strict ban, Rose smirked, glancing at her possessive husband. She realized then that these two men shared a complicated, long-standing history. "Are you treating him or not?" the Emperor barked. Bazarov just grinned wickedly. He had no choice. One word from the Emperor decided his fate. Chloe's brother was rushed in. After a quick scan, Bazarov's face fell with disappointment. Locked away, he missed out on using the boy as a perfect research specimen. Rose snapped. She threatened to incinerate him right then and there. Try any tricks, and you'll beg for death, she hissed. Bazarov didn't flinch. Calling the boy material was a joke, because in his twisted eyes, Rose herself was the ultimate research subject. She just rolled her eyes sarcastically. To save the boy, he demanded a vial of Rose's blood. She glared coldly. For Chloe's sake, she agreed. But as Bazarov pulled out a massive needle, the Emperor finally lost his cool and intervened. His patience had reached its limit. This was exactly what Bazarov wanted, to see the mighty Emperor lose his composure. The Emperor demanded a straight answer, and the doctor gave a shocking response. The incurable plague was nothing to him. He could cure it effortlessly. Within a month, the boy looked human again. He just needed 6 months of medicine. The terminal illness was vanishing. Seeing the siblings' joy, Rose stayed cautious. Mess with the meds, and you're dead. Ouch, you're breaking my heart, Bazarov teased. He talked too much. His very presence rubbed Rose the wrong way. But the miracle was undeniable. Chloe's gratitude overflowed for her brother's recovery. Their dark days of hopelessness were over. Everything had finally changed. Rose beamed, watching Chloe's brother finally embrace a future of health. It was a reality now. Chloe's tears of joy celebrated this impossible miracle. Every hospital called him a lost cause. Even the eccentric Bazarov, usually a total creep, looked oddly flustered. It wasn't that he was a genius, but those other doctors were just trash. Rose finally realized why. A high-profile criminal was still breathing. Clearly, this guy's medical prowess was god-tier. Suddenly, Chloe's voice broke her trance, calling for Lady Rose. Tears of joy streamed down her face. She vowed never to forget this miracle Dr. Rose provided. Rose was speechless. Calling that weirdo a good doctor felt wrong, regardless of his skills. She sternly warned the siblings to keep this man's existence a total secret. Shaking with fear, they swore their silence. As they escaped that dark basement, the mission was a total success. Robert was thrilled. This surgery fueled his dark research and secured the Empress's favor. Now, pay up, Rose. Reluctantly, she plucked a golden strand. Robert's face fell when he saw it. We agreed on blood, she just scoffed, ignoring his whining as she and Sin exited. Waiting outside was the Emperor. It had been his daily routine all month. He wouldn't face her, yet he consistently escorted her to the dungeon and waited like a loyal guard. The moment she appeared, he grabbed her hand. Thank you, Your Majesty. For what? He asked. Because we just secured a legendary secretary. As she flashed a wicked smirk, the Emperor was utterly entranced again. Forget the secretary for your safety. Stay out of that basement, Rose agreed. With her brother healed, Chloe worked like a machine. Next stop, Barrier. She planned to exploit their financial collapse for a massive power play, but hesitated, remembering it was Rose's homeland. Forgive me, I overstepped, she apologized. Rose didn't care at all. Those people were absolute snakes to you, she countered coldly. She was Charlotte's empress now. Barrier's fate didn't matter. Only Charlotte's dominance was her priority in this game. Honestly, she was dying to escalate. She'd waited far too long for this revenge. Suddenly, a letter arrived from the pink-haired second concubine. She acted like a sweet, bubbly lolly, but Rose saw her sister's treacherous shadow. Pure bad vibes. Rose nearly ignored the invite. However, the letter promised an elegant party thrown just to honor her. It was a blatant attempt to play nice. Since she'd ghosted her before, she donned a stunning gown. With Sin at her side, she'd face whatever trap lay ahead. Bring it on. Her grand entrance made the socialites gasp in awe. But the faces were all new. None of her previous tea party acquaintances were invited. Suddenly, a voice chirped. Lady Rose. A vision in pink hair and black lace appeared. It was Nina, the bubbly second concubine, looking like a total doll. She seemed overjoyed. To see Rose, she grabbed Rose's hands, showering her with sugary, sweet compliments. Meet my besties, don't be shy, she chirped. While dragging the Empress along, she mentioned Sasa. Apparently, the third concubine was a total shut-in. That wasn't a lie. Rose knew Sasa's crippling social anxiety all too well. Nina claimed she'd be thrilled if Sasa showed up. Was she being real or just acting? Rose was wary. After the mess with the other concubines, she knew peace in the harem was a myth. She didn't buy Nina's innocent act for a single second. That fake, high-pitched voice was a carbon copy of Nicola. Total bad news. Looking back at her past life, Nina hadn't attacked yet, but Rose was ready to strike. One wrong move and she was done. But Nina kept yapping about her bond with Sasa. I'm so jealous, she cried. It proved Rose didn't hate every woman in the palace. Let's be besties, shall we? That sudden question left Rose feeling completely trapped. As the second concubine showered her with fake flattery, praising her radiance and calling the Emperor super handsome. I'll design your gowns. This style would look so slay. Selfie time tonight? Black hair is mid, but blonde is iconic. The woman's mindless chatter was literally non-stop. Her ladies-in-waiting just nodded along. This chaotic energy gave Rose a massive migraine, but she couldn't decline. Dinner finally arrived. The concubine's high-pitched yapping still wouldn't quit. Honestly, Rose wasn't feeling her vibe. She didn't really know her yet. However, when a young lady accidentally shattered a wine glass, the way the second concubine rushed to comfort her kept Rose from totally hating her. Plot twist. The second they were alone, Nina's mask slipped. She began ruthlessly stomping on a slice of cake, while clutching a vase, ready for chaos. I explicitly said the Empress must be happy tonight. Everything must be flawless. But some loser broke a glass. Her terrified servants were frozen in silence. They watched in horror as the second concubine raised the vase with a demonic glare. She drenched the poor girl, pouring every last drop right over her head. After the bullying, she smirked. We're friends, right? No biggie. The sheer audacity of this woman. This obsessed concubine was stalking the Empress. The Emperor was fuming, even though her home country wasn't just an oil-rich empire, but also Charlotte's main weapons supplier. But if she touched his Empress, he'd gladly deport her, back home, or just end her existence. When he heard his concubine was throwing daily parties just to trap his beloved Empress, the Emperor caught a massive headache. Seizing a rare dinner together, he whispered his dark plan to eliminate Nina for good. They were getting way too close, and despite her sweet act, she was a total snake. She was an absolute nightmare to anyone she disliked. In the beginning, as the heiress of a massive oil empire, sycophants scrambled to become her loyal underlings. But once her toxic nature surfaced, the crowds vanished, keeping a weary distance. Rose knew she had to cut her loose before things got ugly, recalling that strange tea. The way everyone tensed up at the mention of the second concubine felt incredibly suspicious, so that was why. Yet, she was stunned. The cold Emperor even had her on his mind. Though he usually shunned women, she truly appreciated his unexpected concern for her. She lifted her glass of red with a faint smirk. I'll ask when I need backup. Wait, didn't you claim to despise concubines? Catching the Emperor off guard, she decided to tease him. Your Majesty seems more worried about me than I am. That shut him up instantly. He truly cared, but his pride kept the words locked away. He simply downed his wine in one go, refusing to confirm or deny a single thing. His silence left Rose feeling incredibly restless. But honestly, the reason she hadn't erased Nina yet was because the girl hadn't made a move. Despite all the trauma from her past life, Nina had never actually caused her pain. She was just exhausting. Since that last party, the girl had been haunting Rose's steps daily. It was draining. To make matters worse, Blackie and Dose absolutely loathed this woman. They growled whenever she appeared. The only saving grace was her attitude towards Sin. She showered him with praise, even begging him to carry her. That wasn't the issue. The real problem was Sasa. Sasa was naturally timid and terrified of the other consorts. Yet the second concubine relentlessly demanded to see her. She was desperate to play, pestering the Empress constantly. We're besties now, right? I guess. Rose gave a lukewarm response, making the girl puff out her cheeks in a tantrum. She started listing the perks of their friendship, like being the daughter of Floroto's prime minister. She promised any weapon they needed. Loud as ever, she was still better than Elisa or Camila. Plus, Floroto's sea access was a strategic goldmine, a true treasure if they secured it. Rose thought back to those she once called friends, especially the maids who served her. Their smiles were warm at first, but when her family fell, their masks shattered into malice. Those kind faces were just disguises meant to drag her into the abyss. As night fell, the second concubine finally cornered Sasa. Let's play, she shrieked, sounding like an obsessed crone. Sasa hid inside, trembling. Every scream sounded like a death sentence. Someone save the poor girl! That adorable lolly Mary Sue turned out to be a total predatory man-eater in disguise. She kept pestering the Empress to hit a famous restaurant. Rose seriously considered faking a fever, but the girl threw a massive fit. We spend every day together. We're practically inseparable. What's wrong with a girl's night out? She fumed, her face turning red with frustration. Why am I the only one trying? I just missed you. I just wanted to be near you. She started sobbing, looking genuinely hurt. Rose could handle a fight, but this social warfare? She was lost. She recalled Nicola and Ari hanging out all the time too. Was this what socializing looked like? Having never had real friends, she had zero experience. Seeing her enthusiasm and her mention of a secret date with heavy security, Rose hesitated. It was a first for her, and curiosity finally sparked. Suddenly, the girl grabbed her hand. With a resigned sigh, Rose agreed, telling the girl to wait while she changed. She originally planned a quiet day in the greenhouse with Sasa. That would have to wait. Surprisingly, the second concubine's favorite spot looked completely ordinary from the outside. Rose expected something much gloomier, but seeing the girl's pure joy, she'd never understand her taste. Rose realized her sheer naivety only after the feast finally hit the table. What noble lady would actually crave such a glistening, greasy roasted pig? No shade to other tastes, but the second concubine was definitely built different. Luckily, the flavor slapped. The massive spread was demolished in record time. She stabbed the remaining pig's head. Rarity always adds that extra spice of value. Rose wasn't a food critic, but she lived for these occasional culinary adventures. Right before this dinner, Sasa had vanished for a full day and night. The emperor brushed off Chloe's report at first, thinking nothing of it. But once he heard Sasa was taken by the second concubine, he smelled trouble. He checked Rose's schedule. The second concubine had practically forced the empress to go out. He summoned his elite guards and slammed the desk, ordering an immediate pursuit. They needed to recover Rose and the third concubine. He truly regretted not deleting her earlier. Back at the restaurant, the second concubine unveiled a truly twisted surprise. An MC stood on stage. As the curtains yanked open, the trap was revealed. Sasa was bound to a chair like a prisoner. Rose's heart dropped at the sight. She jumped up to save her, but the second concubine just smiled and questioned her. Is the empress mad? Oh, Rose was beyond livid seeing her sister tied up. She bolted upright, demanding answers. But the concubine just played innocent while blaming Sasa. She skipped everyone's parties, but why ghost mine too? I had no choice, really. I had to fetch her myself, and look, the empress is here too. Rose cringed hard. What's the plan for Sasa? Well, how about roasting her? I'm craving something exotic. Staring into the empress's soul, she asked, aren't we besties? Only friends get my support. My father and Florota will be your allies. This woman was Hepwin's only recognized concubine. She claimed to adore Rose. Even when Camilla was taken, she never meant Rose harm. She desperately wanted friendship. Getting rid of Sasa would make her Rose's only companion. Then came the sick request. Let's feast on Sasa together, then I'll trust you. Sasa was trembling with pure terror. Even battle-hardened Rose felt a chill down her spine. How could anyone be this heartless? The concubine told her not to even sweat it. She'd supposedly look after Sasa's staff later. She leaned in toward the terrified girl. As a useless concubine, no one compares to you. Sasa doesn't even deserve that title, so pick me instead. That cold gaze and sharp tone sent a shock through Rose. Suddenly, it clicked. This was the exact voice from her past life's dungeon nightmare. Back when her eyes were gouged out, that same voice offered help for friendship. The owner of that voice would beg his majesty, but Rose would never yield. She chose death over that deal. Fine, then you're just a lab rat, the voice spat. Blindfolded and terrified, she endured inhuman torture that broke her spirit every single day. That woman sang creepy songs, calling Rose her toy. The nightmare never truly ended. No wonder she felt pure disgust the moment she first heard this woman speak. So it was you, Nina. Sasa wasn't worthy? No. Nina was the absolute bottom tier. As Nina prepared to strike Sasa, Rose unleashed massive mana from her palms. The Queen of Flames had returned. Even Sin stood in awe, bowing his head slightly. Welcome back, Queen! Rose roared Sasa, and charged forward, engulfed in blazing fire. They called the Empress crazy, but the second concubine was the one truly unhinged, obsessed with being the Empress's only friend. She snatched the most vulnerable girl around. Seeing the Empress ready to kill, Sai realized the beast had finally been awakened. Stay back! The blade grazed Sasa's cheek. One wrong move, and it was all over. Bitterness filled her heart. I'm the useful one here. Why does the Empress keep choosing her? Holding Sasa, she whispered softly, seeking approval. But hearing the Empress reject her friendship, that was the trigger. Her sweet mask crumbled into a feral snarl before a tragic laugh escaped. Her patience snapped. She ripped the gag from Sasa's lips. Why should I torture you myself? Just end the friendship already. But despite her trembling, Sasa refused to be a pawn and screamed. Lady Rose, I'm so sorry. I'm just a burden. Those words pierced Rose's heart with pure guilt. No, Sasa, this is on me. Suddenly, the blade bit into Sasa's shoulder, aiming for her ear next. Rose's fury ignited. She struck with everything she had, ready to incinerate that concubine into ash. But they were tangled too close. Unleashing flames now might roast Sasa before it touched the enemy. Blood dripped from Sasa's ear, fueling the concubine's ego. She actually licked the crimson from the steel. Obsessed with being the Emperor's only one, she whipped a dagger at Rose. Want to save her? Then slice off your own ears. Go on, start with the right. Sasa was shaking like a leaf. Cold sweat drenched her. Seeing Rose hesitate, Sasa ignored her agony and begged the Empress to run. Don't sacrifice yourself for me! This defiance enraged the concubine, who slashed Sasa once again. As the Empress let out a desperate cry, the concubine rolled her eyes. Then hurry up. Rose eyed the dagger. She just needed one opening to strike back. She'd draw a little blood, fake an injury, and then play dead to bait her enemy closer. The second that woman stepped away from Sasa, Rose would strike. Plan set, she was ready. Time to act. Compared to her past execution, a little scratch was nothing. Sasa was the only one who ever truly cared for her. Rose wouldn't let her down. Rose had just drawn blood when a violent crash echoed from outside the heavy doors. "By order of the Emperor!" The shout froze Rose in her tracks. What was he doing here? The concubine panicked. Before she could move, Sin lunged forward, throwing the doors wide open. Desperate, the concubine shrieked for help, but Sasa's eyes were locked onto her with intense fury. Terror vanished from Sasa's face. She lunged, slamming the chair right into the concubine. That opening was everything. In the chaos, Rose finally saw her perfect shot. Rose thrust her hand out, unleashing a torrent of hellfire directly at the second concubine. The woman shrieked, clutching her burning head as the arriving soldiers watched in absolute shock. Rose cranked up the heat. Above the agonizing screams, she whispered, "Dying easily isn't an option." She freed Sasa instantly, then flicked the dagger, pinning the concubine's hand to the floor. "Just a bit longer, Sasa," Rose cooed gently. "I still have some unfinished business to handle." She shielded Sasa's eyes, ignoring the guards' pleas, and blasted the flames to their lethal peak. The fire roared like a hungry demon. The soldiers stood frozen, too terrified to speak. Rose owed her one. She'd almost forgotten the next person on her hit list. The Empress under attack? The Emperor sighed in frustration. He'd already warned her that woman was insane. Why didn't she listen? But seeing Rose apologize, he couldn't stay mad. She thanked him for the rescue, and his heart softened. He just needed to know her plan. Hearing the concubine was only being deported, Rose sighed. Execution would have been much better, she muttered. Deportation was too light, but she didn't care. She had already delivered her own justice. Rose was satisfied. Isn't living with burns worse than dying? Seeing the Emperor speechless, she didn't know what to say. The Emperor suddenly leaned in, whispering about her injury. Despite his awkward face, he was genuinely worried. Rose froze, totally caught off guard. This ear scratch? It was nothing. She went to call for a medic, but he stopped her. A hand reached out to her the moment she froze in shock. Her wound vanished instantly, leaving her ear flawless once again. This was the second time the Emperor had personally healed her. She was so stunned, she could barely stutter out a thank you. With a hint of hidden pride, the Emperor told her to head back. He clearly just wanted her to get some actual rest. Instead of sleeping, she went straight to find Sasa. After all, this entire mess had happened because of her. The guilt was eating her alive, making the shy Sasa feel totally awkward. "If I hadn't been there, you wouldn't have been hurt." Rose brushed her hair back, showing the wound was completely gone. "Besides, you're my precious friend." Seeing Sasa fall into a quiet slump, "Don't you want to be my friend?" Rose teased, mimicking the second concubine's fake sadness with puppy dog eyes. Sasa shook her head fast. Being her friend felt like a literal blessing from a past life. Finally, she calmed down. But Rose still needed to thank Chloe for calling His Majesty. Little did she know, Chloe's words would flip her world upside down. Apparently, the Emperor was totally whipped for her. That's exactly why he deployed the guards instantly. It was the first time Sasa had ever seen the Emperor stress over anyone like this. Plus, that bracelet on Rose's wrist was a major deal. Rose stared at the jewelry in disbelief. A few days later, the Emperor invited her to another dinner date. She tried to stay focused on her secret plans, convinced he had an ulterior motive. Her confused expression threw the Emperor off. "Is something wrong?" she asked, trying to figure out why he'd summoned her. "Why? Because I missed you." His dead serious expression sent a massive blush straight to her cheeks. Rumor had it that lovers in the kingdom of Verso exchanged bracelets as a vow of commitment. The man would craft one with gems the color of his own eyes to claim his woman. Remembering Chloe's words, Rose's face felt like it was on fire. To keep her from feeling awkward, the Emperor quickly searched for a business excuse about needing intel, then flashed a playful smirk. "This is just my style, right? Or maybe a new source of funding works for you?" Rose finally relaxed. A small smile played on her lips. "This is my style too," she thought. Later, after being totally wrecked by the Empress, the second concubine was finally being kicked out for good that day. She was a total mess, sobbing and refusing to leave. "Can't you just forgive me once?" she wailed, spotting Rose. She held out her trembling hand, begging for a truce. "I've reflected on everything. I'll even apologize to Sasa." But the Empress just frowned in pure disgust, making the concubine feel even more wronged. She cried like a literal toddler, calling the Emperor and Empress stingy as she threw a massive tantrum. Even inside the carriage, she was still desperately trying to block the door from closing. Rose just watched the whole drama unfold in silence. The only problem was that screeching voice. Once the door finally slammed shut, Rose whispered, "Long life to you, concubine." She didn't finish her off because, for someone that arrogant, living in disgrace was a fate way worse than death. Meanwhile, Rose kept grinding on her plans. It wasn't just about the hate anymore, it was the Emperor's change. The tyrant who dragged her down in her past life was now sending soldiers to rescue her. He was personally healing her wounds and constantly asking her out to dinner. And most of all, After learning what the bracelet meant, her heart was doing backflips. She was now the Emperor's woman and the officially recognized Empress. Remembering that night, when the Emperor walked her home and whispered goodnight so tenderly in her ear, it felt like actual love. She tossed and turned in bed, wondering if he was losing sleep over her too. Suddenly, a vision flashed through her mind of her falling asleep in his arms. Her face turned bright red, even after 2 lives. She was still a total rookie when it came to real romance. Recalling the tyrant from her past life, she valued this new life far too much to waste it. No more distractions. The Emperor's second concubine, along with the 4th and 6th, were already out of the picture. Now, it was time to crush their families. The opening move of her grand revenge was simple: seize the second concubine's pearl empire while cementing the Emperor's absolute trust in her. Luckily, the rest of the world remained oblivious to the fact that the waters of Floroto were teeming with precious pearls. Charlotte's every move would draw international eyes before she could fully secure those lucrative shores. This secret had to stay buried. Her plan? A covert mission to Floroto, accompanied by her 2 loyal shadows, 4 and 7, the Black Hounds. With tomorrow's departure looming, today marked their final specialized training session. From lightning reflexes to bone-shattering bite force, these pups were perfect. Now, they just needed to stay obedient. The Emperor always watched her training from the balcony above. Usually, she just played it cool and ignored him. But today, she actually gave him a wave. When he didn't react, the silence became super awkward. If she were Nicola, she'd be winking and dropping cringy pickup lines right now. Let's face it, she had 0 talent for flirting. On second thought, focusing on the dogs was better. The Emperor definitely didn't expect romance from her anyway. She needed to prep for tomorrow instead of overthinking. Little did she know, she was totally wrong. That tiny simple wave had already sent the Emperor's heart into overdrive, leaving a faint blush on his stoic face. When his assistant brought in urgent reports, he just brushed them aside like they were nothing. His gaze remained glued to the window. While his wife was busy plotting, he was drowning in the urge to just pull her close and kiss her. Sleeping alone in that massive 2-meter bed every night was pure torture. He'd imagine her lying right there, but fantasies are just cruel illusions. The moment he reached out, she'd vanish into thin air. "Tell me, did you miss me?" Suddenly, his assistant offered to swap out the desk's floral arrangement. The Emperor snapped back to reality, eyeing the wilted petals. That was the very first gift from his Empress. Once vibrant and full of life, they were now fading away. "Let me replace them, sire." "No need," he replied. With a surge of healing magic, the flowers bloomed back to life in an instant. The assistant stood frozen. This man, who never helped anyone, was now healing not just the Empress, but even her flowers. It was legendary behavior. I mean, who could have seen this simping coming? The Emperor's entire world revolved around those flowers now. That undeniable smirk on his face proved he was absolutely whipped. Meanwhile, at the estate of the second concubine's kin in Floroto, the vibes were drastically different. News of his daughter's return hit like a freight train, and the old man couldn't believe his ears. Then he saw Charlotte's official report. Nina's crime? Assaulting the Empress. Pure rage boiled in his veins. But anger was useless now. Rose was already en route, and the real show was about to start. The girl was literally threatening people with knives, and her father just sat there. He claimed it was sincere love while she tortured people to the brink of death. Talk about toxic parenting. Rose was genuinely speechless. Moments later, she grabbed 4 and 7, storming into the Floroto Palace. Like a total boss, catching the king and queen off guard. Seeing them bow their heads in silence, she offered a cold apology for her entrance while her hounds growled, ready to tear them apart. Terrified, the king folded instantly, admitting their massive failure regarding Lady Nina. "We were truly at fault," Rose scoffed, her laughter dripping with pure disdain. Nina actually had the audacity to threaten the Empress, a botched kidnapping and a failed assassination attempt, yet the king brushed it off as a minor slip-up. Their loyalty to Charlotte was a joke. Shaking with fear, the royals desperately insisted it was all a misunderstanding. Damage control was in full swing. The Emperor of Japan was livid, ready to mobilize his entire army. If war erupted, Floroto would be annihilated. Just as the king hit peak despair, Rose pivoted, dangling a flicker of hope before his terrified eyes once again. Everything depended on his sincerity. Cede the territory, and she'd only hold Nina's family accountable. The king was groveling in gratitude until he heard about the land. Then, his heart sank. His mood plummeted like a rock, but trading a little dirt for peace was a total steal. As the kingdom's only port and some worthless sea, the royals had zero leverage to say no. They signed the deal. To them, that port was nothing but a forgotten, wild wasteland anyway. Nina's father agreed it was a bargain. Now, he had to desperately salvage his relationship with Charlotte. If he failed, his entire bloodline would be wiped from the kingdom's noble history forever. As Rose made her exit, the man scrambled after her like his life depended on it. After a pathetic apology for his daughter, he began weaving a web of desperate excuses. He produced Nina's private letters, claiming every sentence proved her undying desire for friendship. Every word on those pages screamed that Nina truly, deeply wanted to be Rose's ally. The old man whimpered that his daughter spent every single day drowning in her own tears. Supposedly, being rejected by Rose had left Nina devastated, sobbing uncontrollably behind closed doors. Between the authentic seal and the raw emotion, Rose realized the old man wasn't actually lying. Remembering their brief closeness, Rose couldn't help but pity her and despise her toxic, selfish sister. Smothered by her parents and brothers, Nina had become a tragic soul who knew absolutely nothing. She couldn't distinguish right from wrong. In the end, who was really to blame for this? Moved by the father's sincere plea, Rose forgave Nina. The old man's face lit up with joy. But sins have a price. If a child turns out abnormal, it is the father's ultimate failure. Raising such a monster required a penalty. Flames danced over the man as he screamed in agony. Rose turned and stepped into her carriage with icy grace. She forgave Nina, but sensed the father's malice. He'd surely seek revenge. Meanwhile, news of Rose seizing Perlero port spread through the kingdoms like wildfire. The world was buzzing with praise for Rose, and this was only the beginning of her rise. The useless daughter was suddenly carrying the infamous Charlotte name to the absolute peak. Her father was fuming. Watching his failure of a child succeed was pure, unadulterated torture. If this continued, the villainous reputation they built for Rose would crumble before the public's eyes. Hearing his father's rants, Ari felt the walls closing in. The workload was becoming a nightmare. It had been ages since he'd even seen a woman. Suddenly, Nicola twirled in, flaunting her dress. Seeing his blank stare, she snapped, putting her hands on her hips and cursing him out. He barked back. "I'm buried in work while you do absolutely nothing but party all day." Nicola pouted, innocently claiming that he was just way slower at the job than Rose was. She hit a major nerve. Enraged, he snapped and started hurling stacks of documents at her. She felt totally victimized. Meanwhile, on Rose's side, the atmosphere was deceptively calm and quiet. With the contract signed, she headed to the port. The water was stunning, but the surroundings? Total ruins. Not a single soul was in sight. It felt like a literal ghost town. This was Florodo's only port, yet it looked like a dump. It made zero sense. Her gut told her this silence meant trouble. She needed to investigate before extracting any pearls. She slipped on her mask. Not even her personal guards knew what she was really planning. But Nina's father was tracking her every move. The ambush was already set and waiting. He stood by the docks, haunted by the memory of his daughter's mangled body and the scars on his own skin. Even the prestigious family he once boasted of had been stripped of their title, rotting away in total ruin. Every thought fueled his burning rage as he spat curses at that wretched empress. With a sharp flick of his wrist, he ordered the demoness captured, already savoring the sight of her begging for mercy. She was a mere foreign princess, yet her words alone were enough to seize control of the entire port. While the waters held endless pearls, the surrounding towns had been discarded like literal piles of trash. They eventually found a lone family of 3, but they were all wasting away from a mysterious, agonizing plague. Rose's secret investigation revealed a horrifying pattern. The entire village was decaying from the inside out. Strangely, it was the men who suffered most, their bodies paralyzed and broken by the spreading sickness. Harvesting pearls was now a nightmare. This town was eerily abnormal, unlike anything in the Charlotte Empire. She couldn't risk her soldiers catching the virus, but unlike the Emperor, she refused to just burn it all down. Determined to save them, she prioritized fixing the village's crumbling facilities instead of resorting to fire. Reaching the village chief's home, she hesitated and sent Sin in first to scout the grim shadows. Graves lined the landscape like a forest of death, claiming the lives of both the elderly and the young. A cold dread washed over her. By the time Sin reached the house, the chief was likely long gone. Her intuition was spot on. The village chief had been a rotting corpse for days. As Sin inspected the body, a blade suddenly pressed against his throat from the darkness. The cold steel bit into his skin as a voice hissed a warning to keep his mouth shut. The assassin plotted to use the corpse as a distraction or simply take Sin as a high-stakes hostage. But before he could even move, 2 massive black shadows lunged at him with primal fury. The Empress's pets were absolute beasts. They pinned the assassin to the dirt before he could even blink. His mask was torn to shreds, exposing his terror to the savage guards. He never realized these weren't just dogs. They were Sin's elite protectors, hand-trained by Rose for this exact moment. Staring into those gnashing fangs, the killer felt like he was about to be devoured alive. Sin had left them outside out of politeness, never imagining his good boys would actually save his life. Thinking of Rose's vow to keep him safe, he couldn't help but let a confident smirk slip. The assassin's pathetic insults only made Sin's gaze turn ice cold. "Scream all you want," Sin whispered, "but they only answer to one person, Rose." Right on cue, Rose stepped into the room, and the ferocious beasts immediately halted their assault. The monsters instantly turned into puppies, whining for head pats from their master. She praised them softly, while the dogs gave the trembling assassin a terrifyingly smug look. In a final act of desperation, the dying man ignited flames from his palms, wanting to turn everything to ash. His partner's pleas for mercy came too late as the killer thrashed within his own inferno. Rose noticed something suspicious in the heat. She clenched her fist, snuffing out the magic as she approached. It was the Nina family crest. She let out a sharp, mocking laugh at the sheer audacity. Rose was stunned that Floroto would choose to abandon an entire village just to hide a plague. Not only did they deny treatment, they had effectively sealed the village as a mass grave. She was here for the truth, but it seemed someone was willing to kill to keep it buried. While Nina's father paced nervously waiting for news, a frantic subordinate burst through the doors. Before he could speak, Rose barged in and threw the broken assassin onto the floor like trash. She stood tall, returning the delivery while demanding a very detailed explanation from Nina's father. He tried to play innocent, but Rose simply threatened to take the matter directly to the king. With a polite smile, she pulled out the assassin's crest, the ultimate receipt for his betrayal. There was no escaping this evidence. Meanwhile, 4 and 7 readied themselves for a bloodbath. If the king heard of this, the only thing waiting for the Nina family would be the guillotine. Nina's old man couldn't keep up the act. He hit the floor, begging for his life on repeat. Still, he wouldn't own his mistakes. He threw his subordinates under the bus, claiming total ignorance. He only admitted to negligent supervision. Rose was absolutely done. She didn't want his pathetic excuses anymore. She brushed her hair back and leaned in. "Do me a favor, and I might just be merciful." A glimmer of hope sparked in the old man's eyes, but the question that followed caught him off guard. The Empress demanded to know why the port was a ghost town. Suddenly, he broke into a cold sweat. Choosing his life over his country, he spilled everything. It turned out Floroto's maritime trade was dead for a reason. A mysterious plague had paralyzed the seas. Neither the king nor the nobles could find the source. They didn't know if it was the seafood, seaweed, or humans. A cure was nowhere to be found. Their solution? Seal the town for 10 years, wait for everyone to die, then redevelop the land. The old man actually smirked while admitting this. How could a monster like him deserve to live? Rose had heard enough trash. The old man's eyes gleamed, asking if he was finally off the hook. After being told he wouldn't be reported, he bowed frantically, swearing to cherish this favor forever. But Rose just snapped her fingers. "Did I tell you dogs to stay?" 4 and 7 bared their fangs. They lunged, giving him a warm greeting. Now that the mystery was solved, fixing it was the real challenge. Luckily, it was just a strange illness among commoners. Rose knew exactly who would love to solve this. Fish contaminated by toxic water, yet the people were happily gobbling it up. Most locals possessed innate detox magic, so they played a dangerous game of luck. They figured nuclear waste wouldn't touch them. But then, the plague completely decimated the fishing village. Desperate, the Emperor's only genius idea was to burn the entire village to the ground. Rose wasn't surprised by his lack of vision. She knew that burning everything solved nothing. The root cause remained a total mystery. Reluctantly, she had no choice but to visit him. The power couple entered the dungeon. They briefed the Twisted Duke and handed over all the medical evidence. They provided symptom logs, hair samples, and vials of blood from the infected. Even a corpse was included. The Duke was ecstatic. He didn't even bother putting on gloves. He pulled back the white sheet. His face fell with disappointment. His new toy wasn't fresh enough. Rose shrugged. The body had been dead for days. "So, do you have a cure or what?" The Emperor was losing his cool, but the Duke never worked for free, claiming the case was too complex. Rose knew his game. She told him to quit stalling and just name his price. The Duke smirked. This wouldn't cost hundreds or thousands of gold coins. All he wanted was a drop of the Empress's blood. He held out his hand, payment first. Before he'd talk, Rose felt a shiver of pure disgust crawl down her spine. He already had her hair samples. To anyone else, it was junk. To the Duke, it was priceless. After some intense negotiating, he finally got a vial of her saliva. Look how hyped he is. Rose had never met anyone so warped. Surprisingly, the moment he got the saliva, he spilled the cure. Back in his student days, he'd heard rumors about a new factory being built at the port. His sixth sense warned him, factories mean waste. He figured it would be the perfect thesis topic. That's when he published his groundbreaking research on mercury poisoning. The factory had been dumping mercury for years. Touching it was safe, but eating it was lethal. The fix? Sanitize the area and tear that factory down immediately. Once the water cleared, the seafood would be safe and the plague would finally end. He tossed her some meds. 3 pills a day, and they'll be fine. He sounded way too confident. Rose had her doubts, but had to trust him. She regretted not reading more of Bazarov's papers. If she'd studied his research earlier, she wouldn't be here. Regardless, she started distributing the medicine. she banned seafood and provided rations. The ignorant locals, unaware of the poison, began to complain. Compared to the king who left them to rot, Charlie was a straight-up saint. After Rose hauled in massive piles of pearls, her father suddenly felt regret. He even sent a letter to his son-in-law, the emperor, demanding the first princess of Barrier return home. Talk about having zero shame. Rose had seen scumbags before, but this was next level. She remembered how, in her past life, 2 Floroto harbor fishermen stumbled upon pearls inside clams by pure luck. The sick townspeople saw it as a divine miracle, a literal lifeline to stay alive. But before they could even call a doctor, the king seized them all under the guise of regulation. He didn't just send the army to occupy the village. He kicked the sick citizens out. Watching them scheme together for profit was straight-up nauseating. As the news spread worldwide, Rose's lovely family couldn't keep their hands off either. Everyone wanted a taste of those legendary pearls, even going as far as pressuring Rose to fix the diplomatic mess with Floroto. Needless to say, she was stuck in a total nightmare. Plus, Nicola was already the empress back then. She should have negotiated with the kingdom herself, but instead, she begged her family for pearls via letters. Maybe her situation was actually desperate. Not wanting to burden her sister, Rose reluctantly agreed, making her family ecstatic. After all, Rose was doing the work of 2 people, and just as they expected, Rose secured the pearls. But they complained about the small amount, claiming it wasn't enough for Nicola. Her parents wore fake smiles while secretly craving more, even if just for a simple bracelet. Suddenly, her memories snapped back to the present. Under Charlie's administration, the sick fishermen recovered in record time. One by one, they regained their sharp minds and strength. In such a happy moment, who wouldn't want to work? As soon as the order to resume fishing was issued, the legendary pearls were finally discovered. It was the first time anyone had seen such a haul. Even though Rose expected it, seeing it in person still made her heart race. But what truly warmed her soul was the fishermen's gratitude. In her past life, they were robbed blind without receiving a single cent. Now, everything was different. Clutching a handful of pearls, she recalled her past struggles, where she gained nothing, making her lose interest for a moment. But she quickly smiled again, because the game had changed. Seeing the baskets overflowing with gems, she thought about making a necklace. It was the only way to heal her inner child. She just hoped the emperor would approve. After saying goodbye, she rushed back to Charlie with the loot, having no clue that the emperor was absolutely fuming at his father-in-law. After receiving the letter from Barrier demanding to cancel the engagement, the emperor finally reached his breaking point. He had a gorgeous, talented wife, and they wanted her back? Maybe he should just erase Barrier from the map. Just as he was plotting, Rose arrived with a mountain of pearls, offering them all to him. She promised more would come, but asked for a few herself. She looked at him expectantly, but the emperor couldn't care less about the pearls. His eyes were locked onto her. It made her feel a bit awkward. "Is there something you want to say?" she asked. The emperor froze in surprise, momentarily lost for words. Looking at his flustered wife, his gaze darkened as he asked about her family using her as a pawn. "When did you realize they were toxic?" he probed. Behind the scenes, she tried to read his mind, but Rose tilted her head with a dangerous vibe. If they knew the truth, how could she maintain her facade? She didn't expect the emperor to ask about her father's letters. He knew they existed. Stunned for 3 seconds, a smirk slowly spread across her face as fire erupted from her hand. They were already reduced to ash. Rose told him to handle her mail from now on. The emperor absolutely loved this side of her. The couple couldn't help but burst into laughter. They felt a wave of peace as long as he held her close. What could Barrier even do? Back in Barrier, Nicola was a ticking time bomb of pure rage. After her brother's outburst, she didn't back down. Instead, she immediately tracked down her parents. She didn't complain, though. She actually requested a vacation for him, claiming his constant work left zero time for fun. It was honestly pathetic. In her mind, if he just had some fun, he'd surely stop snapping at her. But their father, who always favored the brother, just sipped his tea calmly, completely dismissing her. After all, the son was the heir to the throne. How could he possibly not prepare himself in advance? The second Nicola mentioned Rose, the father's mood soured even further. He watched her scream about finding a quick replacement, and his irritation peaked. Finally, his temper exploded. He looked his daughter dead in the eye and told her to find it herself, or just shut up. Everyone was finally turning their backs on her. Nicola had never felt so wronged in her life. Fueled by spite, she grabbed a pen and began scribbling a desperate letter to Charlotte. She demanded the emperor return her sister. He had so many concubines, losing one wouldn't matter. Days crawled by with zero response from Charlotte. Fed up with the silence, she hatched a deluded plan to personally drag her sister back home. When the king heard the news, cold sweat broke out across his brow. Reading the farewell letter Nicola left behind, claiming she'd definitely bring her sister back, the elderly royal couple nearly fainted from shock. Meanwhile, Nicola was vibing in her carriage, happier than ever. She thought, if the emperor is this kind to my sister, he'll fall for me and beg to marry me instead. She'd be the most noble empress. Yet, she still planned to force her sister back to work for free. Not only did she sneak into the capital, but she aimed to steal her sister's place in his heart. Instead of a crown, she got a ticket to the dungeon for illegal entry and attempted kidnapping of the Empress of Charlotte, plus treasonous disrespect. Worse yet, Rose wasn't lifting a finger to help. Then came the final blow. Nicola's eyes burned with salty tears, yet she still lacked any shred of remorse. "What's wrong with taking you home?" she whined, calling her sister cruel. The shocking speed at which she confessed her crimes even stunned the two guards standing by. When called a fool, her brain still couldn't process it. The Emperor had already ordered her removal. Rose simply smiled and waved goodbye, while Nicola kept pathetically begging for a rescue that wasn't coming. It was useless. The cold reality of the cell finally hit, and she started sobbing in total despair. Yet, her insults only grew nastier. She was literally digging her own grave. Even the guards were shook. Trying to kidnap the Emperor's one true love? That was peak stupidity, pure and simple. Nicola refused to believe the tabloid rumors were actually true. She still couldn't wrap her head around why everyone favored Rose. Why doesn't anyone love me? But this was just the beginning of her nightmare. Compared to the manipulation she endured in her past life, Rose was living her best life now. From now on, Rose wanted to ensure that every ounce of Nicola's misery was her own doing. Dressed in pure elegance, Rose visited Nicola's cell, completely ignoring her sister's frantic pleas for help. "Did Father and Ari send you?" Nicola nodded eagerly, but a few questions later, the truth came out. She'd snuck out alone. Rose could finally enjoy her evening in peace. Nicola snapped, "Take me with you!" Rose just smirked. "The Emperor would probably silence you forever." Nicola froze in terror, but the biggest shock was yet to come. As she realized her sister was draped in hundreds of high-grade pearls, that level of haute couture was something Nicola had never even dreamed of. Rose finished her flex and headed to the gala, leaving a salty Nicola fuming in her wake. Every bitter memory of her past life watching others party while she suffered was finally shattered today. She was a total vibe, dressed in pure elegance. Even the cold-blooded Emperor couldn't look away. A man who usually ignored every woman actually took a second glance, complimenting her stunning pearls. But Rose wasn't here for flattery. She was locked in, curious about Nicola's looming fate. The Emperor's solution? Immediate execution. Too quick, Rose thought. She suggested lifetime imprisonment instead. Specifically, in the exact same soul-crushing dungeon where she had rotted in her previous life. "I don't need two pests cluttering my capital," the Emperor muttered, sounding totally over the drama. Still, he handed the final decision to his wife. Even if erasing her was cleaner, Rose felt surprised. She was living for his new attitude. Amidst the roar of the high society party, she felt truly seen. As every jaw in the room dropped, the Empress made her grand, cinematic entrance. The woman once discarded like trash by her family was now being treated like a crown jewel. The Emperor used to only care about utility, but Rose wasn't about to let kindness stop her revenge. Her family had used her, and now Nicola was the first target. Memories of the past flooded back. Back when she was Charlotte's Empress, petty concubines treated her like a punching bag, excluding her from everything. They even got physical. Back then, she could only cry alone, since her father never backed her up. She remembered how every man in Barrier used to simp for Nicola. The more she thought, the angrier she got. In that life, a timid concubine named Sasa had the misfortune of crossing paths with a power-tripping Nicola. After a toxic ego boost from bullying Sasa, Nicola went to the courtyard to tan under the Emperor's office. But the Emperor looked at her like she was literal trash under his shoe. He'd banned her from that spot, and his assistant was already moving in to kick her out. His mood was at rock bottom. If he didn't need her as a hostage, she'd be dead already. Right after their marriage, the White Whale ship vanished, sending the Empire's economy into a devastating tailspin. With winter closing in and his sister Layla dead, the fuel supply from the kingdom was cut off. Thousands faced a frozen death. The Emperor was dealing with a massive headache and zero patience. While he suffered, Nicola just laughed and tanned. But in this timeline, the tables had completely turned. Now, it was Nicola's turn to rot in confinement. Her main character delusions were finally crumbling. Originally, Rose was supposed to be her lowly servant, while the Emperor fell head over heels for her. Suddenly, Rose's voice echoed from outside, inviting her to an exclusive tea party. High-ranking noble ladies were dying to meet her. Just like that, Nicola's misery vanished at the thought of fame. Hearing there was a designer dress waiting, she practically threw herself at her sister in excitement. Zero gratitude, though she felt she deserved this as she basked in the fake flattery of the girls. "We heard noblemen are literally lining up to date you. We're so jealous," they gushed, playing their parts. Nicola lived for the clout. She played humble, but her ego was reaching the stratosphere. She truly believed she was the star compared to Rose. Then came the bait. "Are you here alone? Isn't your family worried?" That simple question opened the floodgates. Nicola started ranting like a privileged brat. She trashed her parents for partying and complained about her brother's non-stop work schedule. She even leaked top-tier state secrets her brother mentioned, foolishly adding, "But it's a secret, okay?" Rose was stunned by how brain-dead her sister actually was, but it was exactly what she needed. She knew Nicola was easy to play, but this was basically on easy mode. After sending Nicola away with a fake smile, Rose was beyond satisfied with her puppet's performance. It also confirmed that these noble ladies were just as toxic as Nina was back then. The only difference? They hadn't tried to catch these hands directly yet. With Nina out of the picture, Rose became the new queen bee everyone depended on. Finally, the power was where it belonged. The game of vengeance was just getting started. But honestly, their efficiency caught her completely off guard just moments after the order. They geared up instantly and executed the mission with total perfection. We might never be besties, but I won't let anyone lay a finger on them. Imagining Nicola's smug face right now. She's definitely loving the royal treatment. The trauma of being a pawn in her past life burned, but this time, she's reclaiming everything, piece by piece. Our Delulu sister just got humbled again. The second she left the tea party, she straight up refused to return to her cage. She claimed her sister gave her the green light, but Nicola's only loyalty was to her own massive ego. While pouting in her own little world, a rare spark ignited in her tiny brain. She finally found a target, her sister's private chambers. As the guards hesitated, she barked out, "Move! I'm the Empress's own blood sister!" Playing the royal family card actually worked like a charm. Total success. She strolled in humming, hands behind her back, radiating pure, unearned confidence. Every few steps, she threw thirsty glances at the guards, leaving them blushing and confused. Finally, she reached her sister's door. Her jaw dropped. This place was a total upgrade from her own dump. She tried to keep her classy facade up, but internally, she was plotting to loot all the luxury items before her sister got back. That pearl necklace was calling her name, but before she could swipe it, a sudden commotion erupted behind her. "Explain yourself," a voice boomed. Turns out, the Emperor himself just walked in. Instead of panicking, she saw an opening. She grabbed her skirts and executed what she thought was a graceful bow. But the Emperor only had eyes for Rose. "My sister's busy," she chirped. "Why don't we have a little chat instead? And what value do you bring? Do you actually know anything useful?" The Emperor's icy gaze drip-fed pure, unadulterated disgust. Even his aide felt a wave of secondhand embarrassment for the man. Oblivious as ever, Nicola bragged that she held all the secrets because she was the family's favorite child. But when the Emperor demanded cold facts, she froze. Silence filled the room. After all, she'd already spilled all her tea at the party. Desperate, her brain scrambled for one final hidden secret. "Actually, my sister isn't even the king's real daughter." She looked so innocent, but the Emperor was absolutely floored. Even the aide gasped. This was brand new info, but one thing was certain, this girl just signed her own death warrant. Reminder, the Emperor himself was born out of wedlock, yet Nicola just kept smiling that brainless smile, claiming her sister stole her destiny and that only she deserved the crown. Talk about a world record speedrun to the grave. She was busy daydreaming about a romance with him when a massive hand suddenly lunged, yanking her hair with zero mercy. She shrieked as the pain flared. In that split second, the Emperor's eyes screamed murder. Only Rose's plea to spare her kept him from ending her right there. Instead, he threw Nicola into the darkest dungeon. She was totally clueless about why she was being locked up, whining about the dirty floors. But then, his face contorted with rage as fire magic crackled. "You're nothing but a pathetic woman," he spat. "Your hair isn't even real gold. How dare you compare your trashy self to my wife?" Nicola was left speechless. After what felt like forever, Rose stepped off the carriage, only to find the Emperor waiting for her. He looked totally stressed. Before she could even ask what was up, he started venting like a madman. He kept ranting about some disgusting idiot. She thought he meant her, until the aide filled her in on the drama. She nearly choked, laughing. Honestly, even she didn't think Nicola could be this spectacularly brainless. While she was still giggling, he whispered, "I'm just so glad it was you who walked down that aisle." Her heart swelled. This started as a forced marriage with her as a mere hostage, but now, she had absolutely crushed all expectations. Her smile beamed, leaving the Emperor totally mesmerized. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. So, he just reached out and took her hand. "Your sister's vibes tainted my hand, so you're taking responsibility. Walk with me in the garden." The onlookers were shook. Is this really the same woman-hating tyrant? They were basically the ultimate power couple. Both shared a past of being used and discarded like trash. Now that the truth was finally out, he led his wife through the sunlit garden, looking so soft and sweet it actually terrified the bystanders. They tripped over themselves, diving into the bushes to gossip. They didn't expect to witness a cold-hearted tyrant actually falling in love. "What brings you here, Lady Sasha?" This brief encounter didn't shift the world between them. Not yet. It seemed she lived in this greenhouse. Rose twirled her hair, and it wasn't just for the flowers, but because Sasha loved this place. But his grip on her hand remained firm. "Your Majesty," she stammered, blushing. "Aren't you going to let go?" she asked. He smirked back. "Do you want me to?" She was completely spellbound. Knowing his fury toward Nicola, she couldn't help but ask, "What did she do to trigger you like this?" "I heard you're not the king's real daughter." The words hit her like a truck, leaving her totally stunned. She couldn't believe Nicola leaked that secret. In a foreign court, a fake bloodline is a total death sentence. She braced for his disgust. Instead, he gently stroked her golden locks and revealed his own dark past. The former emperor had a harem of concubines, all discarded the moment they gave birth to his children. As one of 13 bastards, he was pure trash to Layla, the so-called legitimate princess of the empire. The very day he finally seized the throne, his own mother was sentenced to a miserable fate. He spoke with a chilling, icy calm. Rose's heart ached for the broken man behind the golden crown. She was shocked. This cold, powerful ruler was actually opening up his scarred heart to her voluntarily. Whispers claimed he murdered his own father. Whether those dark rumors were true or not simply didn't matter. That old tyrant deserved a miserable end. To Rose, the truth behind the blood on his hands was irrelevant. Both were unloved orphans of fate. But in this moment, none of those past traumas mattered anymore. "You were so unstoppable they had no choice but to crown you. We might be illegitimate children, but we survived because we're the strongest. So keep that same energy and keep moving forward. Let's use those greedy fools as stepping stones. I'll personally help you burn their ambitions to the ground." Perhaps their meeting was written in the stars. They were two of a kind, destined to collide forever. Leaning against his shoulder, Rose whispered, "If this bothers you, you can always push me away." The emperor was stunned by her boldness. But reject her? That was a move he could never make. He turned toward her with a gaze that finally began to thaw with genuine, overwhelming joy. Sasha hadn't realized her own power. With just one phrase, this simple princess had changed everything. She had shattered an entire international plot. Soon after Nicola's arrest, the Wine's Kingdom sent their envoys. They claimed the scandal involving the second princess needed to stay buried for the sake of the alliance. The emperor even made sure to keep Rose in the loop about every sensitive detail of the situation. Rose couldn't believe anyone would back a snake like Nicola. But the emperor's transparency was the real shock. It was the ultimate proof of his deep trust. Their intimate moment yesterday had changed the entire dynamic. But the mention of Ynez triggered a memory. A cold, calculating smirk began to play on her lips. "Shin, get me ready. I'm crashing this meeting." Meanwhile, the Wine's envoy finally dropped their bombshell. They were proposing a grand military alliance to wipe out neighboring nations and expand their borders. As he scanned the battle plans, the emperor felt the familiar thirst for conquest and glory. With infinite resources and weapons at his disposal, expanding his empire felt like the logical next step. He wanted his name to tremble across the world again. But Wines? They were still complete strangers. Trusting them was a massive gamble, but if such a tiny kingdom tried to play tricks on him, he would personally ensure their total annihilation. He was ready to sign then. Rose suddenly walked in. "Mind if I join the party?" She flashed a lethal smile, confidently eyeing the documents in his hands. Just as she suspected, Ynez's tactics were amateur, clumsy, and completely predictable to her sharp eyes. "Your Majesty, kill this deal immediately." She offered zero explanation for her sudden, bold demand. The Wine's envoy started sweating bullets, but before he could even stutter an excuse to save face, the emperor had already made his move. "Tell your king the deal is off. I refuse to cooperate." The entire court was paralyzed in shock. One word from the empress, and the emperor folded instantly. The emperor had already given his word, but tell the king I flatly refuse this alliance. The court froze in absolute shock. The emperor was ready to sign, but the empress flipped the script with a single sentence. "It turns out the third concubine was right. This power couple is as terrifying as they are perfect." They kicked the Ion's envoy out immediately. Afterward, the emperor demanded to know the real reason for her rejection. He never could have guessed the twisted motive behind Ynez's desperate plea for imperial aid. Their goal was to plunder the empire's arsenal, a tragedy that had already played out in her past life. Once Ynez secured those top-tier weapons, they sold them all to Bariel for a pathetic price. They weaponized the concept of assistance just to steal. Too bad they picked the wrong targets this time. To make matters worse, the Ynez royals were obsessed with Nicola, which seriously annoyed Rose. Even the emperor felt a massive headache coming on. He couldn't believe that woman had such a toxic charm. But it didn't matter. Rose had a plan. Her sister's cursed fire magic was exactly the same. Turns out the younger sister had it too. She'd been rotting away in the dungeon for several days now. Nicola was reaching her breaking point. She was desperate for a bath and to return to her old room. But the guards completely ignored her pathetic cries. Secretly, she began channeling fire magic into her palms. She tried to melt the iron bars, but she didn't realize they were forged from elite, refined steel. Her impure magic couldn't even leave a scratch. Even with fire magic, she was missing something vital. She hadn't inherited the god-tier magical genes her sister possessed. She screamed, begging to see Rose. She had no idea her sister had already sold her out. As soon as the Int's envoy vanished, Rose pitched an alliance with their rival, Cancer. Since Charlotte's trade ships frequently passed through there, the two nations were already linked. Plus, in her past life, after a major ship attack, Cancer was framed as the villain. They were crushed by Charlotte and forced to pay a bloody price. They were nearly wiped out. Now, because of their weakened state, Inns had marked them as easy prey. Rose couldn't stand this kind of bullying. However, the Emperor didn't see the vision yet. What could that tiny nation actually offer? Just wheat. But that wheat was the key to everything. It was the perfect fuel for Charlotte's harsh winters. Right now, it was just a simple port of call. With just a little help, Cancer would happily become Charlotte's most loyal puppet. For that alliance, Rose knew Cancer would do anything. It wouldn't just be wheat. They'd fulfill every single demand. They'd sign away anything we asked for, including the massive reparations we'd eventually squeeze out of wines. Once Inns surrenders, everything goes straight into Charlotte's pockets, and they'll be grateful for the chance. But Inns was a different beast. Rumor had it they were aggressively beefing up their military power lately. Rose's move was clear. Use Cancer to break Yin's. This wasn't just about the money, it was about securing Charlotte's winter survival. So, who are we going to break first? While the room was still reeling, she dropped the ultimate logic. Dealing with Yin's was actually simple. They just needed to play the super hostage they already had in their hands. So that was it. The Emperor was completely sold on this flawless plan. He didn't just agree, he was all in. He promised to back his wife's play and immediately ordered envoys to be sent to Cancer. He was going too. They would march into Inns hand in hand. You're coming along as well? Yes, I'll be by your side. As the terrifying duo plotted, the staff fell into a total panic. Only Sin stayed composed. But can I bring my sister? Rose asked with a wicked smirk. The Emperor was surprisingly cooperative. He agreed to release her and treat her like royalty again. He couldn't wait to see the Yin's royals become completely captivated by Nicola's presence. Why waste such a valuable pawn in a stinking dungeon? With a simple wave of her hand, Rose upended an entire kingdom and humbled her sister. Meanwhile, the Inn's king was absolutely fuming. Charlotte was a war machine, yet they rejected his hand to ally with a weakling like Cancer. But the one thing he never expected, the Emperor and Empress arriving right at his doorstep. Though few, every warrior gripped a lethal blade. High above sat the Emperor. He sat there, his aura radiating absolute dominance. Yield or fight, both suited him just fine. Without wasting a single heartbeat, he slammed the surrender treaty onto the king's desk. The brutal demands were clear. End the Cancer invasion, swear fealty to the Charlotte Empire, and pay back every loss, plus cede territory. Rose stated the terms coldly. The King of Inns looked absolutely hesitant. Was he hiding a secret ace? Rose's confusion vanished in 3 seconds flat. A dangerous smirk played on her lips. Catching her drift, the Emperor signaled with a wave. Nicola was tossed like a ragdoll before them. The king and his sons recoiled in horror. What is this? Nicola is a princess of Barrier. She is your own sister, your blood. Rose stood silently by her Emperor. Blood? That means nothing. I belong to Charlotte now. The Emperor stood tall, cold-bloodedly reciting Nicola's sins one by one for everyone to hear. She insulted my crown and tried to seduce my wife. Tell me, does she deserve life? I'm still weighing her punishment. At this blatant threat, the eldest prince finally snapped. He unsheathed his blade and lunged. How dare you kidnap Princess Nicola with your filthy hands? Stop! Before the blade could strike, a hand erupted with a tempest of flames, blasting the crowd backward instantly. You really are the witch from the rumors. That slur earned the second prince a brutal strike, while the Emperor shielded his queen with an overwhelming aura. No one insults my wife and lives. Coldly, he leveled his blade at Nicola, who lay trembling on the floor. Sign the treaty, and she's free. Rose smirked, her eyes reflecting the dancing, chaotic flames. Refuse, and you'll face the combined wrath of both Charlotte and the entire Barrier Kingdom. Nicola couldn't fathom such cruelty. Once the king's signature was secured, Rose didn't even spare her a second glance. They parted ways with chilling smiles. Despite her rescue, Nicola felt nothing but a hollow bitterness. She clung to Rose's arm, sobbing and wailing for the kind sister who used to protect her. Did she think Rose was naive? Nicola knew that returning home empty-handed meant facing a lethal scolding. She desperately needed a scapegoat. Come back, sister. We can finally be a happy family again. Mentioning the past was a fatal mistake. Rose's patience finally snapped as blasts of fire silenced Nicola's frantic screams. Why haven't you learned yet? Rose's gaze was glacial and merciless, while her flames surged with terrifying intensity. Nicola could only shriek in agony, clutching her head in despair. She was absolutely beyond livid. The Emperor asked if she was satisfied. Is this supposed to quench my thirst for revenge? You must be joking. She was unapologetically wicked. The Emperor's brow furrowed, but he couldn't stop himself from bursting into deep laughter. Her darkness only fueled his obsession. Arm in arm, the twisted couple strolled back toward their palace together. Upon returning home, Rose noticed the Emperor had switched back to that middle-parted hairstyle again. He looked handsome, sure, but the side-parted style was way better. What a waste! The Emperor looked visibly annoyed. Though he stayed silent, he magically swapped back to his old look in the blink of an eye. Pure perfection. As his wife walked the dogs, he posed intentionally by the window, watching her through the glass. Rose blew him a kiss, but his words left her baffled. Wait, I thought you liked the new look? His bluntness caught her off guard. She stole another glance, shocked by how surprisingly adorable the Emperor could be. She turned away, satisfied, oblivious to the fact that the Emperor was already plotting to crush Barrier. The original scheme involved using Rose as bait. Nicola's arrival proved that Barrier was desperate to get Rose back. Whether she was a scapegoat or a wild card, they could seize Barrier with almost zero casualties. All he needed was one letter to the king. Surrender now, or the hostage gets executed instantly. But what happens after victory? Would Rose leave him? The mere thought of her walking away was agonizing. Absolutely not. He could find plenty of hostages, but he could never replace his one and only wife. I want to dominate this world by your side. Those were the very words she had promised him. She was chaotic but brilliant. Most importantly, she had managed to steal his cold, blackened heart. He missed the thrill of conquering Innis. No other woman was this captivating. Now, it was time to bring Barrier to its knees. Barrier was spiraling into total madness. On the day Nicola returned, she immediately threw herself into her father's arms, weeping. My sister is a monster. She torched my favorite dress and let the Emperor throw me in a dungeon. Worst of all, she returned without a single coin, leaving her father drowning in waves of suspicion. Despite Rose regaining her golden locks, her father knew Nicola's words were usually laced with poison and lies. He figured she was exaggerating. What could a girl like Rose actually do? But the very next moment, reality exploded. The secretary arrived with an urgent scroll from the King of Innis. Nicola's heart sank as she realized it was about her. While her father scanned the text, she tried to slip away. The document was a massive demand for war reparations. Innis was playing hardball. After all, they had technically surrendered, just to get Nicola back in one piece. Her father was so consumed by rage he couldn't even speak. How did everything go so horribly wrong? Yet Nicola felt zero guilt. As the pampered second princess, she believed she was incapable of making mistakes. Two sisters, both golden-haired royals, yet the Emperor only had eyes for the one everyone called insane. The younger sister was nothing more than a convenient pawn. In her past life, during the fall of Barrier, the Emperor had ordered Nicola to be locked away until Barrier yielded, but she wasn't about to go quietly. Nicola pounded on that door 25 hours a day. If she wasn't living in luxury, then she'd make sure everyone suffered. She never expected the Emperor to ghost her like this, his mind racing to calculate how to crush Barrier at the lowest cost. Logic dictated they should wait for the army to be fully prepped, and he knew it. But time was a luxury he didn't have. Winter's bite was coming and Scorpio had already cut their fuel supply. Without a resource raid, he didn't know how many of his subjects would freeze to death. If Barrier didn't cave soon, he wouldn't hesitate to send the hostage's finger back as a cold-blooded warning. He'd originally cuffed Rose for this exact scheme, but his heart was starting to catch feelings. Even with his wife arriving 3 hours late, a few soft words from her completely melted his icy rage. Rose was totally caught off guard by the summons. After all, she'd just been vibing and walking the dogs. She wondered if it was a code red, especially since the Emperor had been spilling all the tea lately. He kept parading her around in public, yet she played it cool and kept her questions to herself. She braced for Barrier's demands, only to find out Nicola was already back at the palace, safe and sound. Watching the Emperor stay silent with his original hairstyle, honestly, it low-key made her day. She tried to break the ice, but the tension only thickened. Was the situation really that cooked? Her mind raced, trying to unlock memories of what went down during her first life at this moment. Watching the autumn leaves drift down, it suddenly clicked this was the exact turning point from her past. Just as news of Nicola's kidnapping hit, the Emperor dropped a bombshell confession she never saw coming. This scheme went way back long before the White Whale ship revealing the dark reason he married into Barrier. He laid it all bare, how he planned to use her as a pawn to bring Barrier to its knees. The room went dead silent. Who reveals top-secret villain arcs to the person they're actually targeting? The aide was sweating bullets, convinced Empress Rose was about to dump the Emperor on the spot. He peeked over, expecting a breakdown, but he was stunned to see Rose wasn't even crying. Instead, she was clutching the hostage plan with a gorgeous, terrifying smile. So, what's our next move? She accepted it just like that? The Emperor was absolutely floored by her reaction. But then again, that's just Rose always keeping him on his toes with her chaotic energy. Time to lock in. Her family was a bunch of losers, yet money kept flooding their gates every day. The Emperor of Charlotte was fed up. Barrier was abusing their geography to slap them with insane taxes. Their vibes were rancid, and they were even blocking his trade ships from returning home. So, he chose violence. Invasion or psychological warfare, you pick the poison. This was a total plot twist for Rose. In her past life, the White Whale ship had been trashed. Back then, the oil crisis had left them starving for resources, but this timeline was built different. They had the Oil Kingdom's backing, a sea full of pearls, and a massive wheat deal in the bag. With Chloe and Sasha handling the internal grind, the Charlotte Empire was peaking like never before. He handed her the keys to the kingdom. If you want to flatten Barrier with troops, just say so. Use them or break them. I'll support you even if you treat them like your personal slaves. They threw you away, so make the whole country pay. I'll handle all the cleanup. The Emperor leaned in with that dominant energy, but Rose wasn't about to be outdone in the flirting department. Those words hit harder than any pickup line. She grabbed him by the collar and pulled him into a royal kiss. The kiss left the Emperor fried, but he played it off with a smooth invitation to dinner. The staff was shook. He's giving her just one afternoon to decide the fate of a whole nation? Only the aides saw through the act. The Emperor was doing his absolute best to cherish his queen. His face was glowing bright red, while Rose was busy living her best life in a bubble bath. Peeking through the suds, she asked, "So, Sin, what do you think of His Majesty's spicy proposal?" Sin stood guard behind the curtain, feeling low-key relieved she'd ended up with this specific tyrant. The Emperor was actually putting her feelings first, even though crushing Barrier had always been his goal. But war is never pretty, and if the swords came out, Charlotte would have to bleed too. Recalling Charlotte's brave soldiers charging in her previous life, she felt a wave of genuine pity for them. Though casualties are part of war, she instinctively wanted to spare Charlotte's forces as the dinner hour drew near. She hadn't reached a verdict yet, unwilling to abandon the full invasion or the looming threat of war. Those innocent soldiers would soon become unforgivable villains, but honestly, that wasn't the main concern right now. She simply refused to let Barrier be pitied. She'd bet that even on the day of their execution, her family would play the victim, tricking the citizens into thinking the royals died under false pretenses. This would poison Charlotte's future rule, so she had to ensure those traitors met a truly miserable end. They had to die in agony, without a shred of sympathy. Just like she did in her past life. First on Rose's revenge list, dragging her entire family into the mud, starting with the king and queen. The princes and princesses were next. Every single one of them had to have their reputations utterly destroyed. The thought of Charlotte's casualties still weighed on her, until a warm cup of tea served by Sin finally jolted her awake. The tea had been sent over by Sasha earlier that same morning. This wasn't the past anymore. Her vengeance was the only thing that held any real meaning now. Everyone was a tool to be used. When the Emperor asked for her answer, she chose invasion immediately. Whether it took intel or raw magic, she was ready to give everything for this one precious chance. She needed to prep the battlefield first. As war loomed, the Emperor watched her with a curious frown. He never imagined his wife would be so ruthlessly satisfying. He didn't just want them erased from history. He wanted them remembered as disgraced rats, forever staining the name of Barrier with their crimes. Rose spoke with a chilling, calm malice, revealing every single detail of her specific plan for their downfall. Before dinner even started, the Emperor fully grasped her intent. Her master plan was completely flawless. Her reasons were solid. He backed her 100%, even offering to do things crazier than invasion. Rose just laughed and declined, not wanting Charlotte to be looked down upon by the rest of the world. But the Emperor had one lingering question. Do you really have no doubts about this path? He understood burning her family to ashes. But what about the common citizens of Barrier? Rose knew the truth deep down. Those people were just as guilty as the royal family itself. On the guillotine in her past life, the citizens' cheers were no different from the royals' cruelty. Back then, she was a prisoner with no voice and no chance to explain her side. I chose to be a woman of Charlotte. My people are here, and you are the one I love. She smiled brightly. The Emperor was dazed, his heart suddenly racing with an overwhelming sense of affection. She remembered a vital piece of information Sin shared in the past, perfect for her current scheme. To make the plan work, she would need the full participation of both Sasha and Chloe. As long as it didn't hurt the Empire's goals, the Emperor happily agreed after they finished their meal. Just as he was leaving, his wife stopped him. "Majesty, may I sleep in your room tonight?" The Emperor stood there paralyzed, unable to speak, though his reaction already gave her the answer. They had been watching each other carefully ever since the day they exchanged their wedding vows. Now, they'd seek revenge and crush Barrier together. Rose knew everything was perfect, yet something was missing. Seeing her homeland on the brink of total ruin filled her with a dark, surging excitement. However, Sasha and Chloe were worried. After all, Barrier was the land where she was born. "Are you all right?" they asked. Rose just continued petting the dogs, looking back at them with confusion. "Is something the matter?" she asked, her voice firm and clear to settle their nerves. She reminded them that she was now, and forever, a proud citizen of Charlotte. Compared to worthless blood ties, spending her life with them was what she valued most. Let's protect Charlotte together. Her powerful aura left Sasha and Chloe completely stunned and speechless. Early the next morning, she arrived at Sasha's private residence to set things in motion. She revealed the top-secret plans to strike Barrier, officially requesting their help to finish the job. Serving the Empress filled their hearts with pure, childlike joy. Despite their mountain of work, they prioritized her every whim instantly. The Empress's latest commands tightened their bond as the ladies gathered together. Everyone savored these tranquil moments, paired with Sin's signature special tea blend. With their backing, Rose felt unstoppable in her crusade against her Floroto rivals. Their deep concern for her was unexpected. Looking back, she realized something crucial. Her immense appreciation for Charlotte was actually rooted in these two amazing women. Sasha's intel proved Charlotte's pastries were top tier. Since Chloe arrived, things truly changed. Charlotte's empire flourished under Chloe's touch. Sasha even secured a tutor for Chloe's brother. Seeing them all thriving brought an unexplainable wave of happiness to Rose's soul. Then, Sasha delivered a bombshell. Their pearls were flying off the shelves everywhere. Modest as always, she credited the Empress's genius marketing strategy for their massive success. Chloe, the ultimate business girl boss, was hyped. She'd already scouted the perfect shop locations. The future looked bright. That abandoned fishing village was now a thriving pearl harbor. She couldn't stop praising the Empress's foresight in transforming that wasteland into a gold mine. But her tone shifted to worry. Floroto's kingdom was suddenly restructuring its entire military. Were they plotting to seize the port and its precious pearls by force? They needed to act fast. Not even the Emperor had caught wind of this yet. Rose was impressed by Chloe's sharp intel. It was time to school the Floroto king. Since he refused to learn his lesson, she wouldn't show a shred of mercy. She leaned in, whispering orders to Sin. Chloe's timing couldn't have been more perfect. To reward this vital news, she gifted them two identical exquisite pearl bracelets. Though they hesitated at the price tag, Rose insisted on sharing luxury with her friends. Why keep the spoils to herself, besides? She had her own jewels, and her emperor. After a brief distraction, the conversation snapped back to Floroto's looming sneak attack. It was time to accelerate the plan. The stars were finally aligning for her move. Strengthening military ties was essential. She had to prepare for the coming storm. That once toxic pond was now a treasure trove, churning out thousands of high-quality pearls. King Charlie was livid. That gold mine was now officially part of a rival nation. The man was utterly shameless. He felt cheated out of a fortune he never earned. In his mind, Rose had swindled him out of his country's potential wealth. He blamed everything on the Prime Minister's daughter being a total failure. His rage boiled over. He literally sprang from his throne in a blind fury. He ordered a secret raid to plunder the pond. He didn't care about the risks. Even if caught, he figured snatching a few pearls made the gamble worth it. His secretary was speechless at such audacity, but the greedy soldiers were already hyped. Mounting their horses with swords drawn, they grinned like maniacs, dreaming of easy loot. But their jaws dropped upon reaching the harbor. Charlotte's elite troops were already waiting. They stood tall and menacing, completely outnumbering the invaders. The Floroto thieves began to shake. Charlotte's commander gave the signal. Total war! They were captured in under 3 seconds. Floroto's men folded instantly. Word of the victory reached Rose's ears in real time. She sipped her tea with total composure. She hadn't doubted the outcome for a second. Elite troops versus that trash? It was a massacre. Sasha's intel made it all possible. The Emperor rewarded his third concubine, handing over the prisoners directly to Rose. Reviewing the report, the Emperor sighed. If only the Floroto king had stayed in his lane. Now, he faced an astronomical bill for his stupidity. Her enemies were neutralized for the time being. Rose exhaled sharply, savoring a victory that felt almost too easy. This was the perfect moment to win over the military. She immediately asked the Emperor for a massive favor. She planned to boost morale as Empress before the grand banquet. Soon, her carriage arrived at the bustling harbor. She stepped out rocking wine-colored pearl heels and a sophisticated boss-mode outfit that screamed elegance. Her presence was absolutely blinding. Surprisingly, she brought Sasha along for her high-stakes public debut. Sasha was a nervous wreck. Her attempts to greet the soldiers were barely louder than a tiny mosquito's buzz. The troops were completely floored. Why was the Emperor's concubine here, and why did the Empress bring her? But Rose didn't care about the stares. She reached out and commanded, "Chin up, stand tall and proud." Befriending the troops is a mandatory royal duty. In that moment, Sasha felt like she saw a guiding light. That light was about to change her life forever. Fear vanished as she grabbed the hand that saved her. As Rose launched the first phase of her revenge, her greedy family finally began to spiral into pure panic. Whispers that Nicola would marry the second prince of the NS kingdom soon reached Rose's ears. The news caught her off guard. Apparently, the NS king and both his sons were totally obsessed with her sister. Strangely, the one gaining the most couldn't even touch the throne. On second thought, it made perfect sense. Since Nicola forced NS to surrender, they obviously wanted the Barrier family to pay a devastating price. While the concubines spilled the tea, Rose was dying to grill Chloe for every single juicy detail. To the public, it looked like a dream marriage. Fake congratulations were flooding in from every direction. But Rose wasn't about to let Nicola be happy, especially knowing NS was definitely planning a trap. That prince was not Nicola's type at all. Just the thought of Nicola leaving Barrier for a new life, living as a pampered royal while others adored her, Rose couldn't just stand by and watch that happen. While slicing into a juicy steak, she calculated how to crush her goals before Nicola's wedding day. Should she pivot to a different tactic? Suddenly, a sharp cry pierced the room. "Your Majesty! The Empress is wearing those legendary pearls!" The jealous concubines couldn't stop obsessing over her look. They had heard these pearls were insanely rare and almost impossible to find in other kingdoms. Their hype only continued to grow, yet the Empress was casually wearing 2 massive strands around her neck. Even her butler's uniform was dripping in them. The onlookers began sweet-talking her like their lives depended on it. Rose played the room with total ease while a brilliant new scheme began to take shape. A long journey was on the horizon. The moment the meeting ended, she gave Sin his secret orders. It seemed like a task that would take ages, but Sin was back at the residence in a flash. She penned a quick letter, slipped a pearl inside the envelope, and pressed her wax seal firmly down. Meanwhile, Barrier was descending into total chaos. Charliote's army seized a village in just 2 minutes flat. Her father flipped out instantly, though he felt a weird relief that it was only one tiny village. When someone suggested a counterattack, he reacted exactly as Rose predicted. It's just one village. Not worth it. He clung to the delusion that they were still allies. But while he was huffing that copium, a formal letter arrived from the Emperor of Charliote. Not a single soul in the family dared open it. Her brother just kept dropping salty comments. Why the hell did we even marry Rose off to Charlotte? He whined that his sister was totally useless. Their father, however, still held on to a tiny shred of hope. He broke the seal with trembling hands, but what he read inside left him absolutely speechless with shock. Charliote had officially declared war on Barrier. Oh my god, how can this be happening? By playing the fool just once, Rose had completely outplayed a whole room of cunning, high-ranking nobles. With Floroto now serving as Charliote's puppet state, she hinted that she might just sell them her pearls. The nobles went wild. "You'd really sell them to us?" "Sure," she replied. "Just don't tell my family." A few skeptics smelled a conspiracy, but Rose shut them down with just 2 cold, calculated sentences. The realization hit them instantly. The greedy people in the royal family wanted those pearls for themselves, except those royal parasites only ever wanted to take them for 0 cost. "My family still has me on a leash," Rose groaned, her crown feeling heavier than ever. "She's powerless," the blonde noble sneered, completely underestimating the Empress's hidden bite. Rose revealed a chest of shimmering pearls, instantly hypnotizing every greedy aristocrat in the room. Highest bidder takes all. Using the gems as bait, she masterfully ignited a chaotic bidding war. She saw through their fake smiles. These nobles were just rats, no better than her kin. In her past life, that blonde snake and her father teamed up to bleed everyone dry. They crushed the citizens with insane taxes. These weren't just selfish elites, they were her sworn enemies. Sin once told her while she was rot in prison during her first life that these very people were the ones screaming the loudest for her execution. Now, they were literally begging for her pearls, clawing at each other like desperate animals. "I'll double the Marquis' offer," Rose smirked, savoring the sound of their frantic, noisy greed. Sensing the perfect opening, she proposed a clever deal that would benefit everyone involved. Every noble would get their gems. Watching her work, Sin couldn't help but admire her brilliance. "Captivating as always," Sin noted. "Is that a problem?" "No, it's actually terrifyingly impressive. Her aura as Empress is on another level." Was that a compliment or a low-key burn? Rose felt a bit flustered. "I'll take the win," she thought as they walked away. They moved through the crowd, oblivious to the mysterious figures watching from a passing carriage. Blue-haired strangers spotted Sin instantly. Meanwhile, Chloe had finally nailed her secret investigation. She'd uncovered every dirty detail about Nicola's upcoming marriage to the second prince. "Great work. Time for a drink?" Rose offered. Chloe felt totally honored by the invitation. Her eyes nearly popped when Sin pulled out a bottle of 1982 Lafite. "Drooling already?" Just a few sips of that premium vintage and Chloe's head was spinning. Rose giggled. "Ready for some bubbly?" As Sin poured, Chloe's liquid courage began to peak. The alcohol hit hard. Chloe suddenly felt brave enough to ask the Empress a spicy question. "What part of the Emperor do you find cute?" Chloe blurted, turning Rose's face bright red. "You guys are total soulmates. He looks at you like you're his entire world." Rose sighed, regretting the wine, but then she started thinking about his intense, charming gaze. His eyes really were hypnotic. Just the memory made Rose's heart race and her cheeks burn. Simultaneously, Charlie's forces were on a rampage, seizing 5 villages in record time. But they found a bizarre pattern. The farmland was untouched, but everything else was destroyed. Every single house was a charred ruin. This wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, calculated arson. The fires started 2 days before the invasion. The troops scrambled to report this weird anomaly. Back at the palace, the tipsy duo kept boasting. 1 pearl was all it took to trigger. Total national meltdown. Greed-blinded nobles were bleeding the poor dry just to buy more jewels. Returning to Charlotte, Rose immediately updated the Emperor on the internal collapse she'd caused. Barrier was ripe for the taking. The perfect moment to strike had finally arrived. Their defenses were a joke. Infiltrating would be a walk in the park for her. She and Chloe were ready to wreak havoc. Apparently, that clown Aerie was in charge now. He was a lazy womanizer. With his mind on girls, he wouldn't notice a coup coming. She laid out the plan, but the Emperor seemed totally distracted by something else entirely. He stood up and patted the seat next to him. "Sit here." Rose froze, totally stunned. Her heart skipped a beat. She was ready to bounce and relax, not deal with this. Sin poured some tea while Rose tried to keep it cool, nodding along nervously. She waited for his next command, but one look at his face made her pulse skyrocket. He was staring intensely at her. Suddenly, Chloe's drunken words flashed through her mind. The Emperor's gaze felt heavy, different from the rest. Those eyes were dangerously charming. She forced a clumsy smile. "Need something?" His response caught her completely off guard. The Emperor didn't seem to get it. Every time her report ended, he'd just settle in right across from her. The vibe was loud and clear. Playing along, she took a seat right by his side. Even after several kisses, she still felt like a total rookie. Her heart was absolutely hammering. "So, the plan's still a go?" The Emperor checked in on the barrier operations, while pulling her into a tight embrace. The 3 single guys nearby turned bright red. Pure awkwardness. "Exactly. Everything's on track." Rose gave him a dazzling look, naturally leaning her head against his chest. She didn't forget to hype up Chloe. In this moment of peace, she wondered if taking the lead would make things even easier. But after a few days of their sweet domestic life, Barrier descended into pure chaos. The king slammed the door open, fuming with rage. Because Aerie had ghosted his summons way too many times, he felt his crown was being disrespected. But Aerie looked totally checked out. He hated being treated like a circus monkey while juggling boring state affairs. The old man was seeing red, but now wasn't the time for a meltdown. The nobility everywhere was jacking up taxes like crazy, calling any refusal to pay a full-blown rebellion. The commoners were suffering. He begged Aerie to find an exit strategy fast, but Aerie couldn't care less. He was too busy shopping for pearls for his girl. Who wouldn't want those gorgeous gems? He honestly didn't get why the king was tripping over the peasants' lives. This wasn't exactly new, right? The old man screamed in frustration. Meanwhile, Charlie was snatching up villages, one by one, leaving the nobles in a total panic. As dense as the father was, he knew he had to stop this. But without Rose, his son was basically useless. Suddenly, a soldier burst in, looking terrified. Another village had fallen, and the enemy even posted their next target in the papers. Talk about savage. The soldier's next words sent a chill down even Aerie's spine. It wasn't just a lost village anymore. The furious citizens were ready to revolt because the army was missing in action. Civil war was brewing. It looked like the perfect storm, but the reality was a nightmare. A letter from the front lines arrived. Every village was riddled with disease and starving. The only silver lining? The land was still usable. Rose had already predicted this disaster. Barrier's management was a joke. Still, she felt like she couldn't judge. Looking back at her past life, she'd been a total monster too. What's the move now? Can we stick to the script? A wave of guilt hit her. Taking those villages would burn through massive amounts of cash and energy. Wait, what are you saying? The Emperor dismissed her worries. To him, these were just hiccups. Plus, Charlie was loaded now. Those villages were worth their weight in gold even without a dime. He gave her a soft, indulgent look. Right? She couldn't help but giggle like a belle. Moving forward with the original plan, the Emperor ordered a massive financial bailout for the villages. Immediately, the staff went into overdrive. Some prepped medicine while others scrambled for food supplies. But then, Sin quietly walked in with a massive bag of gold coins, leaving them both stunned. After Sin's report, they realized this was contribution money from Barrier's own nobles. The Emperor was shocked. Those high and mighty jerks had hoarded a mountain of wealth. This cash was perfect for the relief fund, proving those pearls were basically a license to print money. No wonder everyone was chasing them. As they talked, Sin poured a fresh cup of red tea. Taking a sip, he finally understood his wife's joy. He saw why she kept Sin close, and that recognition made Rose beam. Sin wasn't just serving red tea. He suddenly produced a massive stack of intel. Every page featured Bazarov's medical research. During Rose's initial investigation, she realized these files held insane strategic value. Her command, Sin had to commit every single word to memory. No way she'd let that lunatic pull her strings again. Talk about a total power move, right? Your Majesty, Sin is quite the genius, isn't he? The Emperor's face stayed stone cold while scanning the reports. But inside, he was low-key impressed. Memorizing Bazarov's endless library was a feat no one expected. Word for perfect word, a smirk played on his lips. I misjudged him. He's truly a top-tier asset. With one calculated scheme, the Empress absolutely drained the life savings of her home country's greedy nobles. Then, a seemingly random news leak sent her father spiraling into a total state of panic. Plot twist, the nobles twisted the truth, blaming the skyrocketing taxes entirely on the royal family's greed. The people suffer. The enemy is the royals, the headline screamed, but the king just vented his rage on his son. The clueless prince just shrugged it off. It is all cap, he muttered, suggesting they just shut the newspaper down. That brainless move was basically a self-report, a guilty confession they didn't even mean to make. I should have teamed up with the High Lords, the king ranted, while his son just shouted back in fury. Nicola watched the chaos with a hidden smirk. They treated her like trash. Now it was finally their turn. She was confused. Was losing 7 tiny villages and a trashy newspaper really worth all this screaming? Why the drama? They were so busy fighting that they didn't see their entire kingdom walking off a cliff. By today, all 10 lords from that secret barrier meeting had already wired every cent of their fortunes. Rose flashed a wicked grin, signaling Sin to bring out the treasure she had prepared for the big reveal. Behold, Your Majesty. Massive chests overflowed with shimmering light, but the Emperor's eyes told a different story. This was no ordinary loot. As the shipment finally pulled into barrier, the trap was officially set. A brown-haired noble was vibrating with hype. Even half-closed, those massive pearls were straight up blinding him with their glow. But the celebration died instantly. In a flash, those priceless treasures transformed into worthless, pitch-black pearls. The noble stood there, completely shook. Every single box began to oxidize, turning the jewels into total trash. Pure, low-grade fakes. To make it worse, the bottom of the chest was filled with literal garbage shells. The younger lords were losing it. The elders tried to demand a refund, still foolishly believing that Rose was still their little puppet. They had no idea they were just lambs being led to the slaughter. Behind the scenes, every single angry demand letter they sent was immediately tossed into the flames. Rose laughed as the threats turned to ash. Their secrets were a joke to her. What a bunch of clowns. She actually wanted the world to see. If they wanted to play games, she would make sure they lost everything. Everything had changed. Rose wasn't a barrier pawn anymore, and Sin was far more than a disposable slave. She was Charlotte's empress, the same one who once plotted with the Emperor behind cold prison bars in another life. Thinking back to how those nobles framed her for manipulating the kingdom made her blood boil with rage. Those snakes were the ones embezzling taxes all along, while hiding in the shadows. But she was the scapegoat. Not this time. Now, she was crushing them without a single shred of mercy. Their legacy would burn just like those letters. They were sinking into total oblivion, unable to even touch Charlotte. Real panic set in. Secretly funding the enemy? That is a one-way ticket to a death sentence for treason. Some lost their entire life savings. Imagine dumping your fortune just to end up with a box of rotten plastic. They even tried begging Sin for help, but Sin didn't give them the time of day. He was finished. I am a citizen of Charlotte now. Hearing that, Rose's satisfaction was off the charts. While the nations clashed, one newspaper was making bank by predicting every single one of Charlotte's military moves. Someone was leaking the next target villages. After nailing every prediction, the once tiny paper became the ultimate source. Barrier citizens trusted them more than the king. Even royal threats didn't faze the editor-in-chief one bit. Then came the ultimate bombshell. The barrier royals were jacking up taxes to fund their own luxury. All just to buy pearls for greedy nobles. And the envelope had the receipt's actual photo evidence included. High-grade pearls, absolute masterpieces. This scoop was enough to send massive shockwaves across the entire nation. The chief snatched the pearls, eyes gleaming as he ordered an immediate print run. He couldn't wait to humiliate the royals. Media influence is a truly terrifying weapon. Rose watched with bated breath, eager to see her grand scheme finally ignite. Days later, the headlines finally hit the streets. The long-awaited news was out. Barrier soldiers were abandoning the people. The royal family and the high and mighty nobles were losing their minds, completely obsessed with Charlotte's pearls. The headline was a total clickbait masterclass, but the Emperor just scoffed. How much power could one tiny newspaper actually have? Rose smirked, telling him to just chill. Small or not, every bit of Barrier's intel was dancing in her palm. Check this out. The king nearly had a stroke after being framed for buying up every single pearl in sight. To make matters worse, he barely had any. But the queen? Her situation was honestly even more pathetic. She hadn't even laid eyes on them. And those tax hikes? She'd never authorized such a thing in her life. Harry was left totally speechless. I mean, it wasn't like he'd banned it, but he didn't expect this mess. Following his father's lead, he launched a deep dive into every noble family mentioned in the scandalous tabloids. Those people definitely jacked up the taxes. Surprisingly, their private vaults were completely drained of gold and silver. All they had were boxes of cheap knockoff pearls. They got played. They deserved it, but that wasn't the real issue. The king couldn't wrap his head around his son's logic. Like it or not, the crown was already caught in the crossfire. Since warnings were being ignored, he decided to shut that newspaper down for good. His lackeys scrambled to obey. Harry kept his cool. Father, wouldn't silencing them just be admitting that all the rumors are actually true? His son always loved raining on his parade. Face twisted with pure fury, the king was determined to end this. He wanted everyone who defied the crown charged with high treason for the crime of insulting the royal bloodline. The chief thought the whole thing was a joke. Invented stories? Please. They had cold, hard evidence in their hands. He slammed the photograph onto the table, but the soldiers just looked at it and shook their heads in pity. Turns out, it was just a generic photo. By the time it was published, Barrier's troops had already cleared it. They found pearls in those boxes, sure, but they definitely weren't from Charlotte. The entire connection was fake. The chief and his right-hand man stood there, completely floored. They had no idea what was even happening anymore. That mysterious cloaked woman had never steered them wrong before. But the second-in-command's brain finally started clicking. They'd been played. All that legit intel was just bait to make them swallow this one massive lie. But the trap had already snapped shut. Rose watched from the shadows, absolutely loving the chaotic result. In her past life, this very newspaper was the one that dragged her to her ruin. This was ultimate karma. Her initial plan was simple: bribe the press and then expose Barrier's dirty laundry to the entire world. But with Chloe's assist, she managed to squeeze in a little extra personal revenge on the side. The public worshipped that paper. If the royals attacked it now, the people's trust would crumble into nothing. Everything was falling into place perfectly. Now, the whole world saw the royal family as the ultimate villains. Would her family be happy? Please, they never cared about the truth anyway. But winter was fast approaching. It was time to head back home. That first dance with her beloved, it felt like a dagger to Rose's heart. Even the emperor joined the dance. Did he do this often with his concubines? Well, after that brilliant strategy, after seizing those 7 barrier villages, Charlotte's grain silos were finally bursting at the seams. Supplies were up by a staggering 270%, and everyone knew it was all thanks to Rose. With the emperor's backing, no citizen would have to suffer through a starving winter ever again. A massive banquet erupted in the palace, but Rose's heart was strictly focused on her ultimate career goals. Barrier would be crawling back to beg for mercy soon enough. Your Majesty, the people are absolutely thrilled. His approval ratings were skyrocketing. Every word out of her mouth was dedicated to hyping up the emperor. Yet, the emperor's gaze was fixed solely on her. He knew exactly what Rose was really after from the start. This wasn't about saving Charlotte, it was about watching Barrier burn, even if his wife wouldn't admit it. It didn't matter. He gently reached out and clasped his wife's hand firmly in his own. Rose froze in total shock. Was he actually asking her to dance with him? Even that sculpted face remained icy. While the crowd craved scandal, she was trapped in pure disbelief. After all, rumors claimed the emperor had never once graced the dance floor with any woman. Without waiting for a breath, he swept her into the limelight. Shall we dance? The silent sovereign didn't utter a word, merely guiding her hand to rest upon his broad shoulder. As they found their rhythm, he dipped her low a move so smooth it left everyone breathless. You're incredible, only because you're leading. He was finally becoming the emotional anchor she needed. Truth be told, this was a first for both. Years of royal etiquette finally met their moment. She couldn't pull her gaze away. Something wrong? The emperor's sharp instincts missed absolutely nothing. She beamed. It's nothing. This is my first dance. And I'm just happy my partner is you. Seeing his wife radiate such ethereal beauty, the emperor felt a strange, new spark ignite his soul. A small smile played on his lips as he whispered back, but the music swallowed his words. Bathed in thunderous applause, Rose knew he'd spoken, but his secret remained lost to the crowd's roar. While the happy couple shared a second dance in paradise, the kingdom of Barrier was entering hell. Famine began to claw at the land as their vital food supplies vanished right under their noses. The king finally realized the lethal truth. Those 7 tiny villages Charlotte seized were Barrier's breadbaskets. The realization hit like ice. Without those lands, they wouldn't survive the brutal winter ahead. A king who doesn't know his own terrain is a failure. Survival was now a desperate gamble. Panicked, he lashed out at his son's incompetence, though the queen already saw the disaster coming. Rose had played them. She knew those villages were the lifeblood, and the king felt totally blindsided. Fury boiling over, the king barked a command. Find Rose and make her return our land now. But the prince lacked any real ambition, driving his father into a blind, murderous rage. The son refused to crawl for mercy. Fine, the king spat. Must I be the one humiliated? Grabbing his son's tie, he growled. We need those resources just to survive the winter frost. We deal with Charlotte later. If our people revolt now, we're all dead. Do you understand? Swallowing his massive pride, the king penned a formal visit request, a bitter pill to swallow. They set off for Charlotte terrified, while the imperial couple merely laughed at their pathetic arrival. The old king couldn't believe his sweet daughter had turned into such a ruthless, tactical predator. Wasting no time, the king of Barrier rushed across the border the moment his letter arrived. He drilled his son relentlessly. Watch your tongue. One wrong word to the emperor, and we're finished. But even as they stepped into the gilded halls of the majestic royal palace, the silence was deafening. Not a single royal official came to greet them, leaving Aerie fuming. His father hissed for him to stay respectful. Just as the tension peaked in the room, the power couple arrived hand in hand. Kept you waiting? Rose's voice cut through the heavy air. The king froze. He'd heard the reports, but seeing the new Rose was a total system shock. Gone was the timid girl. Standing before him was a radiant empress who commanded the entire room. So, why are you here? Rose asked with a smirk. Her father forced a fake, shaky smile. He stammered through a plea for Charlotte to gracefully return the 7 occupied villages of Barrier. The king struggled to breathe. This was his daughter, yet she felt like a dangerous, powerful stranger. Your Majesty, King of Barrier, Rose's cold, formal tone made the old man jump in fear. He tried to keep his composure, but his previous arrogance was now just a shameful memory. You're begging an empress, yet you're still giving me orders. Know your place, father. The real nightmare was just beginning. An aide stepped forward, holding a document that smelled like defeat. You want your villages? Then sign this. The duo stared at the paper in absolute horror. The terms were brutal, unconditional military passage through Barrier's borders for all of Charlotte's forces. 0 tolls, 0 restrictions, the ultimate humiliation. The king could only tremble as his world crumbled. Aerie finally reached his breaking point. He wasn't the brightest, but even he smelled this humiliating trap. He exploded instantly. You think we'll sign? They never expected the emperor to be this brazenly insolent. He cowered back in fear, stammering out desperate apologies. The father was absolutely fuming, yet he dared not show his rage. He glanced warily at the emperor. We are supposed to be allies. I gave you my precious daughter. But your current actions. I simply cannot accept this. Before he could finish, the emperor's cold declaration paralyzed him with terror. The invasion was officially starting. Rose stood by, clapping playfully. Why not just deploy troops directly from the royal capital this time? Wait, the father gasped, trembling, but the hot-headed Aerie had already lost all control. He urged his father to leave immediately. We aren't signing. We can't let a few ruined villages wreck our national strategy. The father admired his son's guts, but suddenly, Rose unleashed a warning blast of fire, her gaze freezing them solid. Sit, the nightmare repeated. The emperor gave the ultimate ultimatum, sign or perish. They gnashed their teeth in silent agony. Trapped with no escape, they surrendered. Rose snatched the document, her face lighting up with a grin. Tell Nicola congrats on her wedding. But Rose, how did you become such a monster? The father finally blurted out the question that had been haunting his mind. You were so sweet once. What happened? Rose could barely contain her mocking laughter. Terrified, he stammered, I'm not joking. We truly cherished you back then. But the words died in his throat. Rose already knew the disgusting secret Nicola had spilled, that her biological father was actually her grandfather. He played dumb, desperate to hide the sin. But the truth didn't matter now. Rose snapped her fingers, and like rabid dogs, soldiers slammed the father and son into the dirt. Flames danced on her palms. I promised those villages, but will the peasants actually welcome you? Without the Empire's protection, you're nothing. Charlotte de Barrier had already stripped their lands of every scrap of food. Then, the horror began. Screams erupted as the father and brother burned alive. Rose just intensified the heat, reclining in the Emperor's arms. I wonder how the people will view their pathetic kingdom now. I can't wait to find out.